gentlemen, thank you for your patience. The Madison County Board of Education, August 2nd, 2018 special session is now called to order. Mr. Massey, will you please lead us in a word of prayer?
Lord, thank you for this day, for this start of the school year, and for keeping our kids safe. We just pray for your continued guidance as we move forward throughout the school year. Amen.
Amen.
All right, I recommend approval for the agenda for August the 2nd, 2018.
Motion. Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any question or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, we have a host of updates for you. We're going to do our host of informational items. The first one here for the update, we're going to do a little bit different. We've had, we're the first system in the state to start back for students, and we got a good bit of media coverage. We're in the spotlight, so to speak. So,
Too sure that's a good thing.
so what we're going to do is actually have a little video montage of just a few of the news stories, and this is going to be the update. And we have that queued up now.
Maybe.
No.
Now. Now. There we go.
Tomorrow's the first day of school for
He's one of my
Madison
students.
County
Was
students
he?
and teachers. Today, the Madison County School Board held its annual Teachers Institute. The goal is to prepare for the new school year. Teachers from around the district attended this gathering.
And we're incredibly excited for this school year. We've got our teachers, our principals, our support staff. They were going to be ready for kids to come back. I've talked to so many kids the past few days and asked them, are they ready? They're ready.
Madison County Schools is the first school system in the state to start classes. That happens tomorrow.
Happening today, Madison County school students waking up bright and early, getting ready to head back to the classroom. They're really kind of leading the way in the Tennessee Valley, so to speak, the first school district to return to class. Wayboarding 1, Sarah Singletary, live outside of one county school. Students should be walking through the door any moment. And Sarah, why exactly did the district decide to send these kids back so early?
All actually for the students' benefit. Way 31, we sat down with Superintendent Matt Massey, who told us this new early start date is to help kind of ease these students back into their new normal. In years past, Madison County Schools started on a Monday with a full-on 5-day school week. But district leaders started to notice kids were having a little bit of trouble bouncing back from summer vacation. So they opted for what's called a phase-in week, warming students up with a 3-day school week instead of diving straight into a 5.
Starting on Wednesdays, we found to be the most successful, so trying to find the right Wednesday. If we pushed it back an entire week, it would have been hard to do our fall break and Thanksgiving breaks.
According to Massey, Madison County Schools are the first schools in the state to choose this August 1st start date, but he said next year they'll likely recommend starting a week later on August 7th. Live in Madison County, Sarah Singletary, Way 31 News.
Amy Odell teaches gifted students at Moore's Mill Intermediate School.
Most children are picked up in second grade to show some kind of characteristic of giftedness, whether it is academic IQ or creativity, just thinking in a different way.
Odell says there's nothing like the first day.
You know, a friendly face, someone they're used to. We give a hug, high five, and I believe it's a happy, secure place for kids, and they want to be here.
We spent all of last week talking about the first day of school. What is our why? Why are we here? What's our purpose as a school to be here for children?
The school's principal, Daniel Evans, has worked for Madison County Schools for 12 years. In fact, he remembers being in the first grade when Odell first began teaching.
She was always a great teacher, lively, fun. I didn't have the pleasure of having her, but growing up in an education family, we knew Miss Odell, so when I came here, she's full of ideas, and the kids absolutely love her.
It's love the kids don't forget.
The girl hands me my food and says, "Miss Odell, it's you!" And I'm like, "Oh, this is great." And it's like same eyes from first grade, but just a grown-up version. So to have that kind of enthusiasm in the community, it's great.
All right, and you see our All Means All is our hashtag for this year, kind of centered around our PLC focus that Mr. Solly presented on a couple weeks ago. And we got my presentation, we got that converted to PDF, so I can email that to you guys. But Ms. Stowe and Nathan were there. I didn't know if you guys had any impressions you kind of want to share from our Institute Day or the first day that.
I thought it was good. You know, we enjoyed it. We were glad he didn't ask us any questions, but,
Yes, it was very good. The presenter was timely, Mr. Kenneth Williams. Great information and great message. And it kind of reinforced the PLC concept you guys talked about already, so I was impressed. It was very good. It was very good.
Good deal. So, and thanks for all of our teachers and principals and everything. I think we've had a good start to the school year. When I've visited around, it's every principal I've talked to kind of said, we think this is our best first day back yet. So, of course, and I'm like, Tim told me I'm speaking too soon and I should stop saying such things. But anyway, we've had a good kickoff. So we'll get going here. We've got several topics to discuss for informational items. First up will be a discussion of a parent group policy with Ms. Stender. Ms. Stender is our community outreach coordinator, and she has worked with PTOs and PTAs for a long time and provided much needed support and guidance for them. Previously, there's really been no support from the district for these parent groups, and some have kind of come into some trouble, whether it's phishing schemes or IRS reporting, and so it's kind of brought up, do we need to create some policies to help our parent group be successful? So Ms. Stender's worked with Karen, and we kind of wanted to bring this to your attention and kind of for your input. All right, Ms. Stender.
I think that you have these slides in your agenda. It's kind of some background information, so I'll just kind of go through it really quickly, but stop me with any questions.
And this is in your folder under information and item B, parent group policy. So there's a PDF and a slideshow version and an editable document. So I want to tell you it's in your folder drive folder too.
So we have 22 parent groups in our school system, and this is how it's broken down. We have PTAs, parent-teacher associations, and PTOs, parent-teacher organizations. So there are some differences in how those two groups operate. PTA is affiliated with a state and national organization, so they have some guidelines that are set out for them as far as getting their nonprofit status and their EIN, their employee ID number, and filing their federal taxes. PTOs are different. They have no state or national affiliation, completely independent, but they can operate in one of two ways. They can operate as a support organization, much like a booster club in our schools, or they can operate independently, but in order to do that, they have to be incorporated by the state of Alabama as a nonprofit and apply to the IRS for tax-exempt status. Then the IRS lays out some requirements for them to file their taxes annually. So the documentation that's listed in this policy are considered documents subject to public disclosure. If you're a nonprofit, there are certain documents that you're required to be available at any time for people to view or have copies. So we're not asking for anything that's not already a public document. Some of the documents are also documents that are already required by the Madison County Board of Education in their boosters and support organization guidelines. And this is just a listing of the policy that you already have. I did want to mention two things. We're adding a requirement for the president of all of these groups to attend annual training. The Madison County Schools Parent Organization actually holds a leadership workshop every summer that invites all the officers for all the parent groups to come. Goes through the financial information, among other things. So there's that opportunity for them to get that training, and then if they can't attend that, then we would do one-on-one or small group training. This part of it would set a deadline for them to provide annual documents. Once we have their origination documents, which would be their articles of incorporation and their bylaws, we're pretty much set. We just need them to maintain annual updates. This would prevent these groups from actually operating on board property if they have not fulfilled these requirements. If they have not filed their taxes, then no fundraising on school property. But I can almost guarantee you that that's not going to be an issue. These parent groups or parent leaders were very excited about this proposed policy. They want to know that they're not going to be walking into a financial chaotic situation. This is just a little synopsis. In the past 4 years, we've had 7 groups that have lost their nonprofit status, and we've had to apply for reinstatement, or they've had some other issues where, you know, they haven't had a strong parent group to take care of the finances. So this would enable those parents to feel confident when they're volunteering that they are not going to be taking on something that they're not equipped to handle. And that's it. What questions can I answer for you?
I had 2 questions, just more based on what I was doing some of that. One is, when we got the financial, we did not pay for an audit because an audit was really expensive. So we got like a compilation review, so it was less than an audit. So I don't know if you are demanding an audit because it's pretty expensive, or if you'd be willing to substitute that language out for something less than an audit.
An audit, it doesn't have to be a formal audit, yeah, but there must be some sort of annual review, more than just a compilation of the financial statements.
Okay, but right now it says audit.
Can we do an audit internally? I mean, who would do that audit?
There's a lady at the state level that does some of them. Some get a local CPA firm that will donate their time to do it. Alita, do you know other groups that are doing it, specialized?
I've done audits for these groups all across the system. You really just need someone who's going to be diligent and go through the bank statements and an accountant can do
Right,
it.
but when I was doing it, and I asked the accounting group, we got to do it, but they were like, well, we can't do an audit, but we'll do a compilation and review kind of thing. It was
Well, we
much less
probably
than-
need to change that terminology.
Some-
It doesn't have to say audit, because that does, it looks like we're
Red
asking for a
flag.
formal audit.
Right.
And that's not necessarily the case.
Right.
But they are required to have an annual review.
A review, maybe that's a better
Yeah.
term.
Annual review.
But it has to be someone outside of the
Yes.
organization. You can't have somebody within that.
What we have right now,
Those
or
inside our books, you know, the other organizations and even the PTAs that are now running through our local schools, you know, we do internal audits on them all the time, but it's just those operating with separate accounts outside that we don't. We do require certain, in the state standards, require certain information from them annually, but we wouldn't do their audit. That would need to be from someone else, someone in the community, some accountant.
And we debated requiring our parent groups to not operate externally, but we really can't.
No.
How many do
But the law
operate
says
externally?
they can operate
Law says they
outside.
can.
How many do operate externally?
Is it 7? Or how?
all our PTAs and,
No, the law, the AG opinion says that PTAs and PTOs can operate outside the books.
Exactly.
Other
Yeah,
than
the law
that,
says
we
they
require
can.
everyone else to go through our books.
So they can, but can a system go, yeah, you can, but we're not going to? Obviously, I guess we couldn't stop them if somebody's been
the
operating.
PTA, the national and the state PTA requires that their funds be independent from school. So we would not be able to have any PTAs in our system if we required that.
And the other thing I was going to say, I know when I was involved in it, the president quit like mid-year, so I don't know if you want a provision, maybe take that training. I don't know how you're going to train. Anyway, do you have a way of training if they don't make the formal training?
I can do
Typically, we just work with
one-on.
them. Alita's been fabulous and her team, the parent group, to work with a new one coming in. And then they would have that opportunity for formal training later. we just try to get through it if it happens during the middle of the year. And, we would already have the information we needed by August 1, and we would just help them as we could to get them through until we could provide training.
The other option would be to have the vice president of the organization do the training alongside with the president, because I would assume that the vice president would then become
That's what
the
happened.
default president. So if the vice president is required to do the training alongside the
It doesn't
president.
happen every time.
I know it doesn't happen every
The
time.
vice
but-
president doesn't.
It would make more sense for the treasurer to be there, but we
Potentially,
wanted
yeah.
at least one responsible officer.
Your treasurer and your president are the,
Yeah.
I guess, those that have the greatest responsibilities. So, but if we could get one
Don't I know it?
for the training every year, that would be fabulous.
We do
didn't-
this training.
We didn't include treasurer in this.
You do it at the central office?
You did it right here.
Is there a discussion, you talked about, is there a discussion of recording this and using this over and over, or does that happen currently, where you have it on a video portal or something where they can do some
We can
constant
do
follow-up?
that.
The Alabama Association of School Business Officials has all sorts of resources at their website for organizations. The reason systems throughout the state handle it a little differently. I will say that we have the best controls in place, and with Alita's help and what she did even before working under contract with our system was fabulous. The information that she's provided. I brought my manual. She even has a manual that we provide every summer that they provide. And so those webinars are good, but they're not maybe as specific as we need for our system. But they can always do that. There's so many resources available on that website that are free for our parent groups. And I can provide that website to them too. That would be great for all their officers and even for parents.
Well, I think, a lot of parent groups went to PTOs because they didn't want to pay all of their dues to the PTA. And, they were, in order to do that, I think this is good because they weren't adequately informed about everything they had to do if they were operating outside the PTA umbrella. So it's just a matter of training, which I know you've tried to do.
Well, a requirement would be helpful. Then I can, talk to the ones who can't be here one-on-one and say, what can we do? We need to get you up to speed on the financial policies and procedures. And like I said, when we presented this at the workshop, they were relieved. They were like, how soon can we get this in place? Because you have parent officers who are taking over and not realizing that, they get a notebook and a letter from the IRS on top of it. And some people are just not equipped to deal with those long forms and things. So.
Yeah, we had a
And we
major
can also
mess.
have our administrators to have these
Exactly.
policies, because it takes a lot out of them too when they're dealing with these parent groups or working with these parent groups.
I just guess from a technology perspective, I would think that you would build this learning library, and it'd be a combination of videos from different sources. You could quiz them on it. You could actually have a module for them to go through whenever they want to, and they can go through and they could be treasurer, vice president, president. And you have your annual training like you do normally, but then you have that constant follow-up where they can actually go in and do it on their own. Maybe something to consider in this process, so you can have a constant.
So we're actually looking right now at some vendors that provide
Learning management
training,
systems.
and it actually comes, it's actually an online training that does, it comes with standard ADA training. It can do it can do a number of trainings from different fields, and then systems can actually build their own modules in it or share what other systems have done. So we actually took a demo in it, and we're kind of negotiating the price on it. They do a charge by the number of certified employees. Obviously, we have a lot of those. So that when you buy for the system, you pay an add-on for additional modules, but it seems like I haven't talked with Alita about this, but it seems like we could build in a training, because you can add videos and different graphics. So that would be, I wasn't prepared to present that, because we're kind of looking at different things on that, but that's going to be something that we think, obviously, with other compliance things we're going to have to do, that this would be helpful. It's something you guys actually requested us to look at before, so we actually have been looking, and we're close to coming up with a program that's going to be able to, we're going to be able to document all of the training that, you brought up before, and you, Nathan. So I see this being a module with that.
I see it.
This information that we present at the leadership workshop this year is actually on the website, so they have access to the slideshow and the workbook on the website. So we're making steps to make sure that they're informed.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
All right, thank you. All right, next up is a discussion of our communications update. So we have kind of been in, this has been sort of a transition year with our communications team, and we contracted with 3 different folks, and with actually 2 different folks in one contracting group. And we kind of figured this thing out as we went along. I wanted to give you an update on that and let you just ask questions if you have it. And I don't want you to have to feel like you've got to read all this tonight, but you have a packet from the 3 different ones. So the first one, the contract was with Quadris, and specifically Cassie Watson, Cassie Scott, and Quadris. And it was to focus on our business development, working on our business partnerships. So I designated for Alan Perkins to work with Cassie on this, and what we've done is kind of built a resource of contacts associated with businesses. And the goal is, instead of generally what has happened is when we're looking for a sponsor to sponsor a luncheon or a dinner or an institute or whatever, we just go and ask everybody for the same thing. And whether it's Karen hosting a meeting with the regional District 9 business officials, or if Alan's hosting a meeting with his counselors, we tend to keep hitting the same folks every time. So what we wanted to try to do is to have it more of an organized, where certain businesses sponsor maybe the same thing every year, and where we're sending an invitation, we're sending a thank you, follow up, and that kind of thing, and really organizing that out. And then we want to eventually do training for our principals on how to do the same thing at a local school level. So that has been developing. Alan feels really good about where we are with this now. This is a contract. It's not up for tonight, but I would like to consider going forward. There's a lot of information here. If you have anything offhand on Quadris tonight, you can ask that, or you can come back and email later. We can bring it up at the next meeting too. With our Alita, who just presented, was tasked specifically with outreach to our stakeholders, who are really parents or parental groups, to try to provide guidance. We have a lot of parent organizations. Ms. Rucker's term, when she took over, was a mess, and to try to work on that. But in that, there's a lot of things of what Alita has done in the past year, and some ideas about in the future. But all of these folks helped out immensely with our tax renewal effort, getting the word out on that. There's no way we would have gotten a 70% approval yes on them without these folks, you allowing us to contract for these folks to work with this. Alita also, reactivate our community advisory group policy. It was an older policy that just kind of sort of died. There wasn't really anybody in charge of it to make sure it kind of happened, so we kind of resurrected that in an attempt, and you guys revised a few aspects of that. Those CAG members served 2-year terms, and Alita sent a report to you guys a few weeks ago on, we got some principals that need to do a little more with that, some met more than the required time. And Alita also worked with our strategic planning, established key communicators, and really has invested in our social media of making the consistent posts that happen day after day. We have a team of folks doing it, but that's Alita putting a lot of that effort out and really coordinating different schools together to push out. So Alita's got a lot of information here you can look at. And you can ask tonight too if you'd like, or you can email later, or we can discuss again in a later meeting. We also have Tim Hall. Tim is in the back there too. Tim was brought on really for crisis communication, and whenever we need advisement on how to handle right on the spot, we've got a situation at a school, the principal needs advice, we expected we would use Tim for that. So Tim also contracts with several other things. He's on the radio every morning early at 6 a.m., and he also contracts with FEMA, and he actually spent a couple weeks in, maybe a couple months in Florida after the hurricanes there, and was even giving us advice there. And he has been an invaluable resource to our principals. After we kind of gotten in groove and we realized we could utilize Tim a little more than just for crisis communications. And so Tim's now pumps out those stories that you see on multiple news channels. We are now producing content. The one video of me getting interviewed, that wasn't that TV station there. That was Tim essentially producing that, giving it to TV stations, and they run that, so they probably don't want, I probably shouldn't have said that out loud. That it has become we're doing more work with content generation now, and getting the word out, getting the interview with Mr. Evans at Moore's Mill, feeding the media person to the right spot for the right story. There was another story at Hazel Green that we got, that wasn't a piece of that, but a teacher interview there. So it has been an incredible asset to us, and honestly, Tim's putting in a lot more time than what we originally expected and asked him to. So it's kind of, so now what do we want to do with communications? What would be the vision? You know, if for me as a department, a system our side is kind of, what do you guys want? Do we want to have a support for parents and parent groups and outreach to bring parents in? If we do, that's almost could be a full-time job. If we want to be able to push out media coverage of positive stories, we've got to do the work on the front end to do that. If not, we're always reacting, which is kind of what we have been the previous 2.5 years before Tim came on board. And if we want to create a relationship with businesses, we've got to push that. It almost needs to be a communications department. Obviously, the funding piece has that overhanging there with it. We basically have been running with the budget that we had done with that director of communications that we had a few years ago to work those three different folks in. So in the short term, I would like to consider kind of increasing the workload on those folks, and as we want with anybody that we hire in, they meet and exceed expectations for the short term. I do think the longer term is, I would like to have, if there's a vision for that department, is to have a full-time communications department with more than one folks, maybe two-person and a part-time person, one person coordinating the whole effort. Right now, it is me. I'm sort of the communications coordinator, so I work with those three on that, and honestly, I'm not very good at that because I'm the point of contact for them. I'm kind of the one chasing, and on our org chart, they report to me, and so it's as I kind of get my hands in everything else that's going on, I'm probably not a very good direct supervisor of those three folks. So, but in the short term, I would say our communications through our business, our parents, and the media is better than it's ever been in the history of Madison County Schools. The past, I would say, 6 months, as these folks have really found their niche and gotten in a groove, and I can't give them enough kudos on that. So that said, I just kind of want to open the floor to kind of see your thoughts, your questions. The interesting thing about communications is everybody kind of has an idea of how it can work and kind of where it fits in. I appreciate the opportunity y'all giving me to be able to use this as a contract position, to contract with multiple folks to kind of figure this thing out, and it's kind of reshaped what I think the potential is for our school system. I think we have I think we have a huge potential. We're just on the cusp of really becoming prominent there. So open the floor to you guys on thoughts or questions.
Well, kudos to Alita, to Tim, and to Cassie for an excellent job. That's correct. I mean, my affiliation with the school system for the last 12 years in some capacity, either as a parent, volunteer, or on the board, I've always felt that our communication effort fell short. That's not a slight onto anybody. It's just how I always felt. Coming from a background in communications, I felt like we weren't doing a good enough job to promote our school. We were always very reactive, and it was always on negative stuff. And if you want to promote your system and show the positive, you've got to be out there, always out there, looking for those stories and for those things to make our school system look good. So kudos to those three. You've done an excellent job, and I think most people would agree. I've always been a proponent for looking at some sort of communications group within the system, whether that is a director of communications or however we choose or where to choose to do it. But I think that in a system this big, and this, not only student-wise, but faculty, staff, and others, but also geographically, we're a very large district. You need to have a good communications plan for internal and external communications, not only to support your parents and your students and teachers and staff, but to highlight the good things and the positive things, and build that rapport so when things go bad, and when the rails, when the train does come off the rail, you've built that rapport, and they know that you're going to come to them with honest and true answers and discussion. So that's just, I think there is a place. I don't know how we would work that. That's something that we would have to work together on, but I think there is a place for a communications cell of some kind.
So I appreciate you bringing to the board the things that have been done separately by each of these, and I think we are moving in the right direction. My question would be, do the three entities work together frequently also to make sure, I know that really wasn't what this presentation was about, it was about separately what each one does, but how often do they kind of collaborate to make sure that we're pushing out the same message?
Not much at all.
Okay.
And that was not the original intent. The original intent is, hey, we're going to get together once a week, and I'll meet with all you guys, and it just, I don't want to say life happens, but school stuff happens.
Once a week is a lot.
And it is. But, and they all got other jobs, and well, except Alita. She's almost worked full time with us. She does it. So, but I have not done a good job of making sure those three folks are now talking together all the time. If Alita and Tim work together, they're doing that on their own, and there's no check from the central office and on my end that, hey, how often are y'all working together on this? So obviously, like on the tax renewal they have,
Right.
I don't know, Alita, Tim, what do you guys think? Would that be pretty accurate? Without telling me I'm too terrible of a boss?
That's a fair way to put it. We know each other, we like each other, but I think the roles that, Cassie's working her job, and I mentioned my things, and Alita spends more time here than any of the three of us. That's a given. We know that and respect that. But yet we're all, we're not necessarily in silos. We're in one big silo, which is the county school system. But each of us knows what we're doing, and if Alita needs something, she hollers at me. I've called on her numerous times because I needed her help.
Yeah.
But we could work more closely together by, whether it's quarterly meetings or, one quick phone call together once a week, whatever we need to do. We should do that as a team of people.
Yeah.
It would just make the department overall stronger.
I would agree with that. I think I think that what we're doing is probably a very good start, but I think that we need to be prepared to have the communication between the three entities as well, because when we do hit those big things that we're going to need to push out, that's going to take some collaboration that's already formed. We're not going to be able to make a team then. We're going to need to have already had that communication team to be able to move those things forward. Take the tax renewal as one of those things. We couldn't have done that without community, business, PTOs, PTAs, all of that, and I think that did come together very well, but I think we need to maintain that in order to really be strong enough to call ourselves a system that communicates well.
And a system this large, we're going to have the events that will be all hands-on, where everyone is going to need to be involved. This team of folks, working with the board, working with the administration, those will occur. And you're right, we don't have time to get a team of people together. It has to be in place, functioning, where we know what everyone's capabilities are and what everyone's interests and strengths are.
And I think certainly quarterly is, weekly, I'm not sure I talk to my husband weekly. But quarterly works out pretty well.
It's a good one.
So can we operate the way we've been operating with just a little bit more structure? I mean, it sounds feasible.
I think we can keep operating the way we are now. We certainly can, but I think we can also do it better. If we're gonna, I think to do it better would be one person to coordinate all of this effort. That's not necessarily me. When Tim finds a story, a good news story, to go check on somebody, he's like, hey, is it okay? I got Way 31, wants to do a story. We got a teacher that's been teaching for 30 years at Moore's Mill. Is it okay? And I'm like, yes, run with it. And then it's like, hey, I hadn't had a chance to get with the principal. Should I send him on out or tell him no or hold it? And I'm like, oh, there's Tim's text from 20 minutes ago. I was like, hold it. And then it's like, well, never mind, heard from the principal. So there really needs to almost be somebody that's a full-time that can kind of be more of a, coordinate that effort. That's not me. I think that we can be more efficient, more effective if we had that. But that said, that's going to take more of a commitment in the budget. Karen's going through that budgeting process right now. And I guess what I kind of need to know from you, if there is a vision of mine of what that communications can be, it's going to take a greater investment into that department. And so if we're not ready for that right now, I'm okay, and we can kind of maximize what's set in the budget for communications now to get a little bit more of these three entities. But if we want to take it to the next level, we're going to need to kind of invest in that. So I guess and y'all may not be prepared, that's what I'd like for you to think about.
Well, we're not, I don't think we're prepared.
No, I don't
We
think
need
so.
to see what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think, and just what Mary Louise said, define next level. We need to understand clearly. I think they're doing a great job. I think all three of them are doing a fantastic job. I've seen more in the last 12 months than I've seen in a long time. But we need to define where we see this going, clear expectations before we make any decisions on.
Your vision.
Yeah, a vision on it.
Yeah. And I'm not ready to present that. So that said, those contracts expire as this new school year starts. So I will be asking to extend those contracts later this month at the second board meeting. And if you guys are interested, I would like to work on developing an overall communications plan to present a little bit later in the fall, if that's okay.
I think we need to see if that's the intent, we need to have something that we can look at and
With
And
figures.
evaluate.
With figures.
Yeah.
Right.
Applied to it.
Yes, ma'am.
I did notice I got a flyer today on the AASB's fall conference, and there on the Monday, it's a Sunday and a Monday, and on the Monday there is I think it's a 2-hour session. I don't know who's doing it. I didn't read the whole thing, but on crisis communication, which,
Okay.
I'm planning on going, but, might be good if somebody, somebody from the communications department went.
We will.
Or you can check and see if it's whoever's presenting, if you think it's worthwhile. But
Okay. All right, I think that's definitely something to look at. Alita has attended
it's in Montgomery.
It's in Montgomery?
Yes.
Okay.
Alita went to one for community.
might be the same person that did it last year.
I don't think so. I don't know. It didn't have a whole lot of information. It came with
Okay.
the one about the district meetings, but anyway, it's September the 30th and October the 1st.
Okay. There is a Alabama SPRA, is that right? And it stands for?
ALSPRA.
What does that stand for?
Alabama School PR Association.
There you go. So there is an association for PR folks, and Alita has represented us there, even though her role hasn't really been, I kind of asked her to go and get some good ideas, and honestly, she brought back and has shown me what the other larger school system has done, and what, like Mobile County and Jefferson County, they have a communication department, and it has sparked some ideas and discussion between us with that. So we're kind of trying to figure out how would that look if we made that our own. So anyway, they do have some valuable things. I've wanted to go to those, and it just hadn't worked out. But anyway, there is some valuable information that can be presented there, so we will look at that.
And maybe another topic for another day, maybe just with Alita, but I'd like to revisit our CAG program and the effectiveness of it to see if it's actually doing what we need it to do as far as a unit. I mean, it's something that we can talk about. I appreciate the report you gave us a while back, and but I just think it's something we need to really consider and see if it needs to be retooled. If we just got the right pieces, what's the goals in the CAG program itself? Just something we need to have a conversation about.
So, Alita, do you want to give your impressions of that? I know you accumulated a survey and a report that really wasn't part of the presentation, but it's in your wheelhouse.
I think we do need to revisit it, and I think we need more input from the principals as far as how they're going to be able to utilize that group. It worked great for us for the tax renewal, and that's what we really immediately needed it to do. But for the long term, that might be something that needs to be narrowed down a little bit.
I think those principals who use that find it to be effective. But those who don't probably don't think it's effective.
It's in anything.
Yeah, that's in anything. But, like within my district, no names called, there's one person who, he sets his meetings for the whole year, and they meet regularly. And I think it's very beneficial, and they have a lot of parental support. And that's what we're looking for.
That is
That's
it.
good.
And we tried to, y'all required the meetings. It is in the policy of how often they would meet. And we had, some that didn't meet that requirement. So it's kind of, okay, well, if they didn't meet it, they didn't follow policy. It's not like we're not ready to fire them, and that kind of thing. But it is, all right, so maybe what we need to do is we want them to find this as purposeful. We don't want to do it just to meet the policy. We want them to understand
Right.
that's
Right.
purposeful and productive.
That's my point there. Yeah.
And what happens with them is exactly what you said happened with you. School just takes over, and they've got so much to do that, that can be pushed back. So I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
But that is something Alita's actually has some recommendations there, so let's take another look at that. We'll bring that up as a discussion maybe next month or so. You can come up. Well, we need to get some feedback from principals, you think, before we bring it back?
We have some good feedback. Some of them are thinking that we have too many groups, and they want us to maybe, how can we make this group multi-purpose? We're especially Title I schools, so there's some things that we need to consider.
All right. Any other communications, comments? All right, so a couple months ago, I acted like I was the expert on turf fields.
Did.
And you guys asked me to bring in an expert. And so we have Craig Yancey with Field Turf out of Birmingham. Okay, and Mr. Shaw. And that's one of the things we're kind of flirting around with is do we look at turf, that kind of thing. So, so Mr. Yancey, you're, come on up. Mr. Shaw, you can come with him. And if you have some information to share.
I was going to go first.
Come on, Mr. Shaw, it's your show. And feel free. I told them that they're going to be peppered with questions. So have your questions ready.
We're already experts. We've been to a conference.
Yeah, we went to That's all we needed to see there.
I was just going to kind of talking to some people. I was just going to give you my experience as a principal. I've been fortunate enough. I've been at 2 different schools where we have turf fields. I was fortunate enough to be at a school where we started from scratch. We started from square one. And when we built that, installed that turf, it made a huge difference, and not only for the school, but also for the community. What we were able to do is not only use it for our school, not only for, for football and and for soccer. We also used it for band, and it really became a source of pride in the community because both our middle schools also use that field. And you know, our current situation, Monrovia Middle School doesn't have lights, and they're playing, I think they currently play their football games over at Sparkman Middle School. So both the middle schools use that field, and then we kind of broke it down, and this is sort of the average cost, you know, you kind of like, you know, with the turf and the investment. And I was kind of looking in years past at the school, what does it cost from a principal's perspective, what is the cost to, how much is saving compared to a grass field. And we spend, here at Sparkman, we spend about $15,000, $16,000 a year just on water. And of course, during the summer months, our water bill is about $2,000 a month. So that's about $15,000, and then we spend about $16,000 resodding the field, fertilizing it. So right there, that's $31,000 we're already spending from our school. Then also we use, you know, of course we help, our booster clubs help the coaches, you know, to cut the fields, to maintain the fields, and that's about another $5,000. And then also you have to paint the fields and, you know, line it, stripe it off. So the cost, on the average cost for a year, is about $42,000 a year that the school pays to maintain the field. And then also the uniforms, as you know, if it rains, it gets muddy and paint get on there, you kind of replace the uniforms pretty quickly. So it costs us about, like I said, about $42,000. Then another school I was fortunate to work at, I got there and they had the field and it was right at 10 years old. And they did an immaculate job. And, you know, I know we've heard a lot of discussions that, you know, 10-year warranty. But because they maintained it, that field lasted till for 16 years as far as doing that. And so what we did with the school as far as, you know, replacing the turf, and then Craig can probably give you more information, it was about half the cost when we talk about working on plans to replace the turf. It wasn't the full cost. It was about a little more than half the cost to replace the turf. And what we do is we use corporate sponsorships. I know up here we relied, you know, as far as TVA. So we kind of calculated with all the money that we were paying previously at the school I was at with the grass fields. We kind of put in a savings fund, about $25,000 a year over 10 years. So that was $250,000. And then because we had the turf field, it was really a showcase. And the corporate sponsors that we were able to get to help finance the field, it wasn't not the little $1,000 sign that you see hanging up. It was like Alabama Power, it was Comcast Cable, because it really became a showcase field because everybody, with the traffic flow, with the varsity football, soccer, the middle schools playing, and then we were able to host the youth football. So the youth leagues played on Saturday because it was turf field. And then also, the savings that we were able to do from rainouts. I can remember one game, it was pouring down rain at 6 o'clock, and we had a turf field, and then we were able to play the game. The game wasn't canceled. It was against one of those big rivals. That's the thing about being a principal. As you know, y'all been to many football games. When you play a big rival, yeah, you want to beat your rival, but you're sitting there until the game starts. You're counting how many people in the stands and if it's going to rain or pour down. So we didn't have many rainouts, and so we were able to do that. We kind of projected 10-year plan. We really got with all the organizations, and we really put in a savings account. So at the end of those 10 years, if we needed to replace it, it was not such a big hill to climb. And then here, of course, our school system, we got great support with TVA. I know we've used TVA funds for other projects. So I just want to give you, from a principal perspective, that's what I see, and that's some of my experiences. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Yancey.
Thank you. My name is Craig Yancey. I work with Field Turf. I'm not here to sell field turf. I'm really just here to answer any questions you have about turf in general. But to give you a quick background on Field Turf is actually the company that invented the grass-like fibers with the rubber and sand infill system back in the mid-90s. And so there are some things about Field Turf that separate us from the competition. And that's the one thing that I would tell you, whether you're buying Field Turf or any other turf, is if you want turf just to say you have turf, there are people out there that can help you with that. But there are different levels of turf. I made a mistake when I first started with this company. I was visiting with a gentleman, and I started doing some comparisons, and I said, you know, there's a difference between Mercedes and Hyundai. And we talked about all the advantages of Mercedes, and then when we left, he got in his Hyundai and drove out. And I thought, all right, I need to change my strategy. But then I thought about it, you know, if you drive a Hyundai, there are several different lines of Hyundais, right? There's an entry-level Hyundai, and then there's a top-of-the-line Hyundai, and you expect different things as you go up the ladder. And so that's the way you need to look at turf as well. There are entry-level turf, budget-friendly turf is what I call it, and then there are elite systems, much like Field Turf and a couple of other competitors. So you need to know what you want before you start the process of purchasing turf, and what you're comfortable with, because if you just want turf to say you have turf, then you are putting some things at risk with, first and foremost, the safety of your players. So I'm not exactly sure. I asked Mr. Watts when he called me and asked me if I would come up. I said, sure, what do you need me to prepare? He said, oh, nothing, just go. I'm sure they'll have plenty of questions. So I said, okay, great, I can swing that. So I did want to give you a little background on Field Turf, though. We are the company that kind of started this thing back in the mid-'90s, and there's been a tremendous amount of research and development that's gone into the industry over the past 20, 25 years. So is there anything that I can answer for you, or anything you want me to expound on?
To do a turf field right with your system, can you give us a rough estimate as to what that would cost?
What it would cost. All right, so the first thing that has to happen is you have to do a geotechnical survey. Is there a civil engineer in here? Anyone in civil engineering construction? So you find out what's under the surface, and you need to do a little research, find out if there's any hidden streams, utilities, rock, and you'll do a geotechnical survey to find out what's there. That's going to determine the cost of the construction of the base of the field itself. There's a mass excavation that takes place. You have to excavate the soils down to about 95 to 98% proctor, which is the firmness of the land itself. And then from there you start building your base. You put your drainage in, we build a 6-inch stone base for a couple of reasons. One, for stability, and the other for drainage. So some other companies will reduce the level of stone under their field, and obviously that's going to be a cheaper route. But for the 6-inch stone base and then a quality turf with a heavier infill system, when I talk with people, I give them an average number, and I would say for a top-of-the-line field turf field, if we don't find any surprises underneath, between $850 a square foot the first time. As Mr. Shaw said, 10, 12 years down the road, now you'll find people that say I can do it for $6 a square foot, and they're out there. But again, I had a gentleman say in front of a client one day, well, just because it costs more doesn't make it better. And my return was, my daddy always told me, you get what you pay for, and that's true too. So, I would estimate it at that. But our 6-inch stone basin, we partner with people, some local folks, as well as people around the country who are certified by us to do it. We don't accept a base unless it's done perfectly. And we have people in the state of Alabama who build them as good as anybody. So once that base is in place, a quality base will last you 3, sometimes 4 generations of a field. So when you go to replace your turf, you're peeling up the turf. You fix any minor imperfections that may have taken place over the years that you had your first turf or second turf system in. You replace the turf over that existing base, and yes, so the cost for the second, third, and possibly even 4th generation could be half to 50 to 55% or so more than, or less than. Let me rephrase that: 50 to 55% of the original cost of the first go-round.
And how many square feet are we talking about?
Again, that depends on what it is that you're trying to do. So if you're going within a track, and so the D zones are the zones between the end zone and the circle of the track, they look like a D and a backwards D. So those are called D zones. If you go inside the track all the way around and fill in all the D zones, you're around 100 to 104,000 square feet. If you just do the football field itself with some landing room, so you'll go side to side on the track, obviously, to get the sidelines in, but if you go 3 to 5 yards outside of the end zones for landing room, you're looking at 75,000 square feet or so. So we also, and to give you another quick kind of a piece of information about us, we're owned by a company called Tarkett. Tarkett is based in Paris, but Tarkett Sports is based in Montreal. Our headquarters in North America or in the United States is in Calhoun, Georgia. We produce our own fiber, and we have certified people that take it from there when we're installing. So Tarkett Sports also owns a company called Beynon Sports, B-E-Y-N-O-N. Beynon does probably 75% of the rubberized tracks in high schools and colleges in North America. So a number of schools will, for track purposes, will take 1D zone and completely do it in a track surface for high jump, long jump, pole vault, that sort of thing, so you're not getting the sand into the turf itself. And then maybe use the other D zone as an area for turf for linemen to work out or do specific drills or something like that. There are schools that track surface both end zones. So it just depends on what you want. And then there are schools that have a separate track, like my kids go to Thompson, and Thompson's building some new athletic facilities, and they're building a separate track. So there is no track around the current school football field. So it just depends on the layout of your stadium.
So do you do the tracks as well?
Our company does, and when we purchase or when we're sold as a group or we bid as a group or we're purchased through co-op as a package, there is a savings applied to that as well for a package between track and turf. So yes, we do both.
So the cost I calculated based on the number you gave us for 104,000 square feet with a track, does that include the track?
No, sir.
So you're looking at, what's the cost for an additional track?
So track is kind of a different animal altogether. There are many different levels of track systems. We have an entry-level track, and it's called a BS 100, Beynon Sports 100, 200 to 300, and 1,000. Your entry-level track, and that's not my forte, but I'd say your entry-level track on the average is $275,000 to $300,000, $250,000 depending on what has to be done. So if there's already an asphalt track there in place, then that cuts your cost exponentially. It's down to about $150,000. If there's no track there and they have to build the asphalt base, then you're looking at probably $350,000, somewhere in that neighborhood. But it can go all the way up to $1 million. It just depends on what you want. Hewitt Trussville has a full poured track, which is a BS 1000, which is well into the upper hundreds of thousands of dollars. So
You do realize we're not in the same group as Thompson.
Well, ma'am, I've lived in Alabaster, Alabama for 25 years, and I promise you, this area is much more advanced than Alabaster, Alabama.
We're advanced, but not financially.
Well, we do have a Walmart, so I'll give it, and an Olive Garden now, so we're up there.
So the average lifespan of a first-generation field, I mean, you put it in, how far out until you have to replace it?
That's up to your coach and your maintenance. I'll tell you like I tell everybody, it's low maintenance, it's not no maintenance. Nothing is indestructible. If you go, hey, I got a turf field, and you leave it alone, I'll be back to see you when the warranty runs out to replace it. If you take care of it and you do the minimal maintenance that's required, as Mr. Shaw said, he was associated with a field that lasted 16 years. But on the average, we see them depending on what kind of fiber you get and what level of infill you use. So we have two different lines, a Prestige line, which is a 2-layer system, which competes with all the other competitors, and then a proprietary line to us with some patents attached to it, which is similar to what I brought in now. It's a 3-layer system, sand cryogenic rubber on top, and 9.2 pounds of infill per square foot, 8.4 for a 2 1/4 inch fiber. If you use that and you maintain it properly, it's easily 10 to 12 years.
So what are the maintenance costs for?
Ma'am?
What is the maintenance cost for minimal maintenance per year?
So there are a couple of items that we include in our package, which include in our pricing. One's a sweeper and one's a groomer. So I recommend to coaches sweep it as much as you want. And it's basically a little machine that gets the garbage off the top of the field. Popsicle sticks, tape, Band-Aid, sunflower seeds, twigs, leaves, anything that may litter the field. That can jeopardize the integrity of your infill and cause issues if you don't get it off. So you sweep that pretty regularly and keep that garbage off your field. It also makes your field look better. And it reinvigorates the top layer of infill and fiber. And then we groom it after that.
This runs on gas, this sweeper?
No, ma'am. It's actually a pull-behind unit that just has a rotating brush that throws everything into a hopper. We recommend you pull it behind a light utility vehicle like a golf cart.
Okay.
And then you just dump it into the trash and you're done. The groomer is a similar product. It's a little bigger and heavier. It has some very stiff bristle brushes that sweeps the top layer of infill and smooths it out, keeps it level so you don't get any waving. It also invigorates the fiber and keeps it healthy, and so it doesn't get trapped under the infill. And then maybe we recommend that you don't groom. That's a brushing, and brushing and groomer is actually together in the same system. We recommend you brush it every 30 to 40 hours of use, and then you groom it. We don't like for you to groom our system for a couple of years because we want it to settle in and consolidate and compact a little bit. But after a couple of years, that system also has tines on it, much like a fork, and you'll put it down a quarter inch or so down into the infill itself, and it kind of rolls that over, reinvigorates the top layer of infill, softens your G-max, which is a softness test, not a safety test. And that kind of also extends the life and playability and durability of your field.
So Mr. Shaw gave us a figure of $42,000 per year of maintenance, cutting, water. What would one expect to spend on a yearly basis for maintenance?
Well, the package for our groomer and sweeper is $7,500. So whatever it costs you to charge the battery of the golf cart.
So there's
that's a one-time cost.
That's a one-time cost.
And there's no replacement parts to the sweeper and the groomer that you have to replace?
Unless you tear it up, and it's pretty hard to tear up. But yes, I mean...
You don't have to replace the brush or the little thing that spins? Or
Over time you will. I mean, it's like anything else. Again, it's not indestructible, but you don't have to replace it every year, or every 2 years, or every 3 years. I mean, you might replace it every 10 years or so, or every 8 years or something like that. Our fields are warranted through a third party, insured, non-prorated for 8 years. You'll have people come in here and say, we're a 10-year warranty, we're a 12-year warranty. I even had a gentleman tell me, I got a 20-year warranty on my field. And that's just, so you need to be beware of that, because after 8 years, the industry will only, depending on the quality of your fiber, based on an FPI standard, which is Fiber Performance Index. That's an index created by Labosport. They will insure your field for 8 years, up to 10 years, and then after that, it's up to you. So you can personally warrant it for as long as you want, but it's only as good as the company that's standing behind it. And quite frankly, there are a number of companies who put fields in 3 years ago who are no longer here.
So this third-party warranty does not come with the price of the $8 to $8.50 per square
It's
foot?
priced
That's
into the fiber cost, yes ma'am, into the field
So
cost.
talk to us a little bit about the difference in the heat from a turf field and a natural field.
I'm glad you asked. I was just reading about that last night. There are studies out all the time about that, but and I'll be happy to email you all the information that you need or give you some links to some of the studies. But the heat is actually that happens off of a turf field is very low. It dissipates the higher it gets. So once it gets to above the knee level, it starts to turn into air temperature. So once it gets to chest level, head level, it's just whatever the temperature is outside. Where the heat is captured is at the surface. And so because you do have black SBR rubber, it does absorb heat. It can be quite warm at the surface. The good thing about that is, back in the day, anybody ever play on the old AstroTurf? That was, there you go. So it was concrete, 2-inch foam pad, nylon fiber that would take the skin off you to the bone, and it was like an oven, and it would melt the cleats off of you. Well, it doesn't get that hot anymore because there's a lot of air caught in some of these systems, and we have a lot of sand in ours, so the heat dissipates. And now people are coming up with cooling technologies. Some work, some are snake oil, so it depends on who you talk to. But that stuff that was hot. It would melt the glue. But the industry, in the athletic apparel industry, got smart and said, hey, the whole world's going to turf. It's going to be hotter at the surface. We need to adjust our manufacturing practices in order to build a better, more quality shoe. So instead of the cheap glue, it's a different glue. It's a different molded cleat now. They stitch it, they rivet it. So you don't have the issues that you used to have back in the 70s and 80s when you were playing on that stuff and you run down the field and the bottom of your shoe would flip off. So, as you come up the level of the height of the player, it gets cooler and cooler. So when
But
it's
it's
up
hot
around the
at
head
the
and
base.
chest area, ma'am.
It's hot at the base,
Hot at the
right?
base. So the idea is behind cooling technology is let's cool the base. How do we cool the base, right? Some people say, well, just spray water on it. So it doesn't really make sense to me spraying water on hot rubber. Now you've got humidity, and that heat is going to rise, and now you are affecting the player in the chest and head area, which you don't want to do. Makes it harder to breathe. So some people have a coated sand. I've walked on the beach in the middle of July, and coated sand or sand, it's still hot. So some people paint rubber. When rubber gets hot, that paint's going to flake. Again, you've got hot rubber again. So our company came up with a number of different products to begin with. We started with cork, and cork was great, except cork is so light that it blows off, or if it rains, it washes off, or it's hard to stay in place. And so we moved on to something else. And now we're at something called Cool Play. And this is many, many years in the making, and it's natural minerals, including vermiculite. And if anybody in here is a chemist or a science teacher, they know what vermiculite is. But vermiculite acts as an absorbent as well as an insulator. So it suppresses heat at the surface, but it also absorbs moisture from the air and the ground itself and releases it evaporatively. And Cool Play has been determined by third-party studies to cool the surface of the temperature, the surface temperature by 35 degrees at peak temperatures during the day. So it's recycled fiber, so we're recycling our old fiber, mixing it with the natural minerals, and it's extruded and then broken into these little pellets. And it replaces the top layer of rubber on our 3-layer system. And it looks like rubber, feels like rubber, plays like rubber.
Does it have to be replaced? I mean, does the school have to replace that every so, like 30 hours, 80 hours, 100 hours?
It becomes a part of the system.
Okay.
And there's about a little bit more than half a pound of that on the top layer of our system. And it does mix into the top layer of our second layer on occasion, but because of the properties of it, it continues to work throughout the life cycle of the field. So no, there is no replacement of that. And no water is needed whatsoever. It works naturally, so you don't have to get out and water your field or do any of that other stuff. And in addition to a lot of the things that Mr. Shaw was talking about with paint, fertilizer, insecticides, think about gas that goes in the mowers, cost of maintaining the mowers, and the time that your coaches put in on that when they would rather be sitting in front of a film.
And time painting the fields.
Time painting
on
the field.
Wednesday nights before
I talked to a
home
coach
games
the other day.
until
I'm sorry?
9. Yeah, assistant coaches paint the fields every Wednesday night till 9:30 p.m.
Think about the camaraderie they get doing
We're so tired of each other by that time.
Yeah, but think about the camaraderie they would get sitting at a Buffalo Wild Wings on Wednesday night watching a game and having
planning
wings
their
together.
algebra lessons.
So you're saying it never has to be painted?
Never has to be painted. Those are the stripes and logos, the colors, end zones, everything are inlaid into. They're either stitched into the field, so the long stripes are stitched into the field as a part of the actual field itself. The hash marks, the number packages, letters in the end zones are inlaid into the field, and they're permanent.
So forgive me for not being the sportsman in the
That's
year
okay.
here, but Then you can play soccer and
Superintendent's the
football
expert.
with all the same stripes on the field?
I'm sorry?
So you can play soccer and football with all the same stripes on the
Absolutely.
field all the time? Because I'm gonna get a little confused.
No. So I'm glad you asked that too.
Soccer anyway.
As we get more into this, we start to improve things that we do. When people say, well, my soccer team plays on this field too, well, we have to differentiate between the white stripes on the football field and the soccer field, so we put yellow stripes out. Well, that's gaudy. I mean, it's awful. I'm sorry if anybody has a field that has yellow stripes on it. I apologize.
There's a yellow, the penalty kick, I've coached with those, and every time I see that penalty kick is yellow, I think, oh, there's a flag on the play, like,
Right.
what is that?
Yeah.
Flag on
Oh,
the-
and I do the PA for Thompson High School, and when we're down in the red zone, and yeah, it's hard. But because I want to say flag, but there's no flag. But what we have started doing over the past few years is changing the colors of the soccer lines. The most popular color right now is silver. So when you're watching a football game, it disappears. I mean, you really don't notice it. And when you're watching a soccer game, the soccer kids know they're looking for a silver line. And when you're watching a soccer game, that silver pops right out like you wouldn't believe. Some other schools that may have a dark color, like they may be maroon or they may be navy blue, they're using their school colors to do their soccer lines as well. And the kids are easily differentiating that between the football lines. And so do the stands, the people in the stands, the spectators. Once they realize what they're watching, it's easy to discern. So. And those are inlaid as well, and those are permanent. We have a number of fields in some of the landlocked areas where we are, where a school has one field. We have football, baseball, soccer, and softball in the same rectangle. And they just put posts in for baseball and softball, and off they go.
So this may be a question for Mr. Shaw as well. And I recognize the idea that if you're landlocked and you only have room for one field, and you're going to play 2 or 3 sports on that field and practice, but you still only have about 5 hours after school. So how do you rotate that many, just time-wise? And like I said, that is Mr. Shaw's, that may be a Mr. Shaw question.
Yeah, he's there.
How do you, I mean, if you've got 4 teams that need to practice on one field, I get the concept that turf in and of itself is great, but how are you going to put 4 people practicing in 5 hours?
We rotate it. We have athletic PE. So, we got the practice field, which is not regulation. So we have to practice, currently we have the practice field and then the football stadium. So we have 2 set of teams. So I start practice about 2:15, 2:30. The other kids either go to the study hall or they'll do conditioning their place until about 4:15, 4:30. Then the second 2 teams do it. And then they'll rotate. So whoever practices first one week will practice second the next week. So we have 2 practices in the same afternoon. That's how we currently do it.
And if I'm not mistaken, at Sparkman, you have a separate practice field too, right? Where some of the teams go and do practice. So, and that's the case in most high schools. They find other areas, or they'll split the field between JV and varsity, or freshman and varsity, or whatever it is, and they'll practice on their end of the field. Here's the thing about a turf field versus a natural surface field. And I'm as old or older than most in this room, so I'm kind of old school when it comes to baseball and football, and I've long preferred playing on a natural surface until I started coaching my kids, and they were playing on this artificial surface, and I got out and I'd take infield with them and things like that, and I thought, I mean, this is really a good thing. It's safer. You don't have to maintain it as much. You don't have to spend the money. You don't have to spend the man hours, and it's a good deal, but on the average, you can spend about 5 times as many hours on a artificial surface field as you can on a natural surface field. So you'll get 5 times the amount of play out of your synthetic turf than you will your natural surface. And think about this too. You start the season with your natural surface, it looks great. And by the time playoffs rolls around, the middle of the field is dirt, it's hard, and now you got to start over after the season's over, getting it ready for soccer or getting it ready for next year and that sort of thing. The good thing about synthetic turf, again, with the maintenance, as long as you maintain the field, it's going to look the same from day one as it will throughout the lifetime of the field, as long as you take care of it.
Could your D zones like if it's grass now, could your D zones stay grass or a lower quality of
They
turf?
can. As a matter of fact, yeah, I was at a school recently, last week actually, that left their D zones in grass. They can, but then you're kind of defeating the purpose a little bit. You're having to cut it, you're having to overseed it, you're having to fertilize, you're having to water it, so.
So you said it was safer. Can you explain how a turf field is safer? Because a person my age, all you hear about is growing up when they switched to turf was turf toe, knees blowing out, and now it's safer, so I'm confused.
So let me address turf toe. Turf toe it was deemed turf toe, but I've gotten turf toe and I didn't play on artificial surfaces when I was growing up. But and a lot of that came from the old system. As we talked about, the pad, the carpet, and it's just hard, and it would beat on you, and it would hip joints, back, knees, everything else. So when our founders decided that they were going to do something to change the world, their goal was to replicate a premium sand-based field, and that's what premium football and baseball fields, soccer fields are made of. It's a sand base and then sod and grass over the top. And so our infill system actually replicates the sand and sod, and then the fiber sticks up through that for the grass. Quite frankly, the green is there to make it look pretty. You could play on the infill system because you do play in the infill. You don't play on the grass.
Can we get a discount for not having the green?
Ma'am?
Can we get a discount for not having the green?
Sure. What color would you like? So, blue field, yellow field, you name it. Black. There's a school in Texas that has a black field. Now, I don't know why they would do that in Texas, but that's crazy. But so they wanted to replicate a premium surface because of safety, but they also wanted to aesthetically look like a really natural field. So what has been determined in the book that I just gave you, there's a gentleman in there named Dr. Michael Myers. He is a professor at Idaho State University, and for the past 10 years or so, he's been conducting epidemiological studies to determine the difference between natural surface and artificial surface. Artificial surface with heavy infill versus artificial surface with less infill. Artificial surface with heavy infill versus artificial surface with a pad. Soccer, boys and girls, football, high school and college, football pro. And these have all been double-blind studies, which means he has no influence whatsoever on the results. He just compiles them and puts them into the computer, and it gets spit out. They're also peer-reviewed, and they've been published by the American Journal of Sports Medicine, which you don't get any more prestigious than that. And it is shown that a heavier infill system, which is one of our patents, is not only safer than a premium natural surface with regard to injuries. And the reason being is because it's not affected by Mother Nature. I mean, our drainage system is incredible, so it doesn't muddy up, it doesn't get soft, it doesn't get hard when it's cold, or it doesn't get hard when it's hot. It just maintains the same consistency throughout. The heavier infill system, which we have in our 3-layer system, we want it to compact because we want a firm, fast surface, but it also gives energy restitution back to the player. And the way I try to, the analogy I use is, if you go to the beach and you run on soft sand, how long does it take you to get tired and get sore? If you run on the firmer sand closer to the water, how much further can you go? And that's the difference between the 2-layer system and a 3-layer system. And it's been shown that the heavier infill systems are safer. And you've got the information there, but I'll be happy to. Those studies are so in depth. I glaze over after about 2 pages because that's not me. But if anybody who has a medical background wants to see them, I'll be happy to send it to you.
Disclaimer. Well, what about bacteria? I mean,
So, before I speak, medical background as in doctor?
Nurse practitioner.
Nurse practitioner. So, I'll let her answer that. Okay, so.
What about bacteria?
It's like, there's again.
On the palm of your hands and everywhere else.
I'm one of the oldest guys in the room, but I grew up
Don't lick
listening
your
to a guy named Jerry Clower. And Jerry Clower had a joke where this professor traveled around and made a speech, and his driver told him one day, he said, "Hey, that's so easy, I can do it." And he said, "Okay, you do it." And then so the driver got up and started telling the speech, and somebody asked him a very intellectual question, and the driver said, "I'm so offended by that, I'm going to let my chauffeur in the back answer that." So if you want to take that, you can. But I'll tell you that the best, and I'm not exactly sure what the word I'm looking for, but the sun is as good as there is as far as killing the bacteria. And again, our drainage system, things like that wash right through. Mother Nature is probably the best. How long does MRSA and staph live outside the body?
It can be 7 to 14 days.
Okay.
So maybe a dome setting, the sun, and with our drainage systems, with our sewage systems, we build very shallow ponds. Carrie, this is what you've told me, so jump in here. The sun, with our kind of sanitation systems, with our lagoons.
Lagoons, we have lagoons.
With our
Lagoons.
lagoons, they're shallow, and they go from lagoon to lagoon, and the sun radiates and kills a lot of the bacteria before we dump it in the Flint River. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. That's correct. Yeah, we don't put any chemicals into a lagoon or a treatment plant. I mean, we may modify it before it goes out to the creek, but no, it's the sun all the way.
So the fiber has, now we're getting into words that are way over my head, but has microbial properties that help with the alleviation and mitigation of bacteria. But again, the water washing it through, the sun is killing that. And from an indoor point of view, if you wanted to apply something to kill the bacteria, I guess you could. But outside, there's really not much cause for it, because quite frankly, the stuff that you apply to it only lasts for 4 to 6 hours anyway, which means you'd have to do it every 4 to 6 hours. And if the sun's shining, you don't have to worry about it.
I would argue that a field that has poor drainage with standing water for hours and hours and hours and days has probably got more bacteria and other stuff in it than a turfed field with decent drainage.
Well, when you added your Walmart to Alabaster, you upped the ante on bacteria quite a bit.
How long from start to finish does it take to complete the project?
Depends on your
with the
company.
track and all. Let's say you did
If
the
you
whole.
got bad dirt, it takes longer.
Okay.
Depends on the system, and depends on the company, depends on what you purchase. But track and all, that's kind of, again, out of my realm of expertise. Let's start with football field. Football field, the fastest one from first dirt in the ground to play in on Friday night was 67 days that I've been associated with. I like to say, give me 90 days and we'll get it done. And that accounts for bad weather, hiccups with the construction crews and that sort of thing. The excavation is going to include the track area, and so it's easier to build from the inside out. So as we're building the base for the field, they'll start with the asphalt base of the track, and then we'll put the turf down, and then they'll come back and layer the track. So I would say 90 days, and we should be able to do both.
All right.
So the stuff you put on it to reduce the heat, there's still some difference between natural and turf, I guess, even after you do that. So
I mean,
how much
you
is
can do an alternate infill like a cork or a coconut husk, or we have one that's actually, I left it in the car. It's really, really good. It's great for baseball. It's made out of olive cores, believe it or not, but it feels exactly like baseball clay. And I'm a baseball guy. I grew up baseball. So some of that stuff's amazing. But those things have huge issues that go along with that. They may be cooler in the sense that there's no rubber involved, but you're having to replace it over and over and over again. If you get a heavy rain, it's all piled up in the corner of your end zone, and that's why we don't sell it anymore. I mean, we have it available if you just got to have it, but we really don't push it. So that right there has proven to be more effective than any other cooling technology in the industry. So if it's 90 degrees outside or 95 or 100 degrees outside, which we're not playing football typically in 100-degree weather, it happens, but usually our football games are at 7 o'clock, the sun's starting to go down and it's cooling off a little bit. But if it's 95, you're playing a day game on a Saturday and it's 95 degrees outside and the field may shoot at 150 degrees or 165 degrees. But again, that's on the surface, and as you rise, that dissipates. So that will take it from 165 to 130 or from 150 to 115, and that's a significant difference. And I've got a list of testimonials as long as my leg on how that has made a huge difference in their baseball and/or football field. So if you want to see it, or if you want to talk to somebody about it that has probably seen it in action this summer, the folks at Jack Allen Park in Decatur, they built a soccer, their big soccer complex, Jack Allen Park. They built a showcase soccer field, and it's our number 1 top of the line, doesn't get any better fiber in the world, called Core. It actually has a 10-year third-party non-prorated insured warranty, and they did put Cool Play on it, and they rave about it. So I'm sure anyone at that facility would be able to tell you about it.
It'd be good if you could email us maybe some places we could go tour and board members can go check it out during their lunchtime.
Well, close by, I will tell you that when the new Austin High School is finished, they've put in Revolution 360, which was the best fiber in the world until we came up with Core. Now it's the second best fiber in the world. And they put in, I believe they have Cool Play there as well, but I'm not positive. But I'll check into that. And then the Core field at Jack Allen Park, those are probably in Ogle Stadium in Decatur too.
Right.
Are probably be your 3 closest fields that you can see that are relatively new. If you want an older field, I'll be happy to send you some information of some of the older fields you can tour. And if a group of you would like to maybe accompany us to Calhoun, Georgia to go through our plant and see why we're different, we also have Mercedes Stadium where the Atlanta Falcons and the Atlanta United play. That's Revolution 360 as well. And then the old Turner Field where Georgia State plays is actually Core with Cool Play. So we can make a day of it and tour the plant and tour some fields and show you a little bit about how we make a difference.
So Georgia State has this, they have this.
Georgia State University is playing football.
That's where Wiley's shoe blew out.
Well, they redid Turner Field, the old baseball stadium, into a football.
Yeah, they turned it into a football stadium, and it's absolutely beautiful. But yes, they have Core, which is our top-of-the-line product with Cool Play.
I think, go ahead, Sean.
Your 8-year warranty, that's what you said, right?
Yes.
Warranty. So does that, what kind of usage does that assume?
It's unlimited use. I mean, whatever you want to do to it, to your field is fine. What it covers is failure of the fiber, okay, or installation. If somebody gets out there in a gator and is cutting wheelies in your field and tears up your field, there's nothing we can do about that. If the field catches fire for some reason, there's nothing we can do about that. But if the fiber itself starts to fail, if the installation is faulty, everything there is covered. If you have a backup in the drainage system 2 miles down the road and it pushes water back into your field and bubbles your field, that's not covered, because that's not a failure of the field or the turf. That's a failure of your drainage system 2 miles down the road. But if there's an issue with the turf fibers itself or the installation of the field, that is covered.
And your drainage never gets overwhelmed by strong rains?
So, a couple of quick, there are 2 types of backing in the industry. This is called a perforated backing. So when you stitch the fiber, and this is a slit film fiber, there are also a couple of different kinds of fibers. One is extruded in a panel, and then it is slit as it's being extruded into these honeycomb positions, and when we start putting the infill in, we'll brush it and break it apart. And I actually brought, because it's hard to visualize this turning into grass-like fibers, but these honeycombs break apart and turn into grass-like fibers, and this is called a slit film fiber. And this is actually probably one of the things that I would recommend for heavy usage, especially if you're going to do PE on it and do things, band practice, anything where you're using a flat sole shoe. It's not exclusively cleats or molded cleats. I would go with a slit film or a hybrid, which is slit and monofilament. Kind of getting off the track. So when you put this into your backing, you have to tuft it in, stitch it in. You got to figure out a way to make it stay there, so you put a coating of polyurethane over the back. And when you put the coating of polyurethane over the back, you've now created a waterproof system. So you go in every 4 inches and you poke a hole in it, and the water finds these holes and drains. That's how you drain. So that's what everybody in the world does. That's what our prestige line, our competitive line does. This is a backing that is exclusive to us. It's patented. It's called the Sherlock backing, and we only put the polyurethane over the stitching because that's the only place you need it. All the black that you see in the valleys is porous, and so water, 95% of your field now becomes a drain. And water pours through there like it's throwing through a colander as opposed to trickling around and finding these little holes. So actually the 6-inch stone base underneath also becomes a storage facility, and it'll store water there until it can be moved off site. So there's no drainage system in the world in the turf industry like this one. And just to give you a for instance, and I would have loved to have had a picture to show you, I've got it on my phone, but if any of you guys are baseball, College World Series baseball guys, Ole Miss hosted a regional a month ago. It rained 5 inches in 1 hour in Oxford, Mississippi, and it washed out Ole Miss for 2 days. A friend of mine that I played college baseball with was actually on the field crew at Ole Miss. He sent me a picture standing in the outfield with water to his kneecaps and 2 guys in front of him swimming. And he said, "Craig, they're swimming out here." Water was spiraling down a drain in the left field bullpen. 2 miles away at FNC Park, which is a municipal park where they have baseball fields, and they've just done their infields with our Classic HD Sherlock backing with Cool Clay. It's 2 miles away, 5 inches in 1 hour. 15 minutes after it stopped raining, they started their tournament.
Well, Mr. Yancey, with that, being an Ole Miss grad and reminding me of the Ole Miss Regional and blowing that to Tennessee Tech, we're going to wrap up.
Thank you.
And if there are any further questions, you guys we'll be in touch, and
Can we email
I
you
appreciate your
questions
time.
on
All right, thank you.
Ma'am?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, please leave your contact information. Ms. Shaw, if you'll send that out, and board members can follow up. Because we've got to stick around for the rest of this. And this meeting, you get to jet off.
I could have been here all night. I apologize. I'm a
Hey,
little
thank you.
long-winded.
I appreciate you. No, I knew we had a lot of
We had
questions
lots
for you.
of questions, thank you.
I can come back
Thank you.
anytime. I live in
Appreciate it.
Alabaster. It's an easy drive.
And there's a
Okay.
Walmart, right?
Yeah, well, we got a.
There was no top to that when that came down. When they came down my way, it was empty.
My bad. And we got an Olive Garden too, so come see.
I think you left it on the.
I probably did.
All right, so Ms. Stump has a report for our special education aid turnovers. Later, we'll be considering a contract to get us some help with this. And so Ms. Stump will kind of give a year in review and maybe what we could gain out of this contract.
Well, I've been asked to provide some information for you as far as the special education turnover and I based this on last school year, the numbers that I'm going to give you. In your folder, you have a chart, and the chart is details the positions that were filled last year, and it's organized by school and by position. And with the latest hires being on the left-hand side of the chart, and then it goes across so that you can see that some of our positions had to be filled multiple times. So just as I said, and the chart also, you'll notice that listed on it are some of the positions that have been filled this summer. But the numbers and percentages I'm about to share with you are based just on the 2017-18 school year, okay? So during last school year, we had a total of 93 aides. We had 83 aides that were in kindergarten through 12th grade with our special education students, and then we had 10 aides that were in our developmental pre-K, so for a total of 93. So 40 of those 93 aides were new hires last year. So that's 43% of the total of our aides were new hires. 10 of those new hires resigned during the school year, and 5 more resigned right after the school year ended. So that's a total of 15 out of that 40 new hires. So 38% of our new hires didn't make it, or they made it just through one school year, okay? Also wanted to share that of the 40 new hires last year, 27 of those were to replace resignations, and 13 of them were new units. And then you can see also on your chart the positions that we filled this summer. When I say the 15 that resigned out of the 40, that was just for last school year. So some of these you see that we're replacing this summer are resignations, but they may not have been hired just last school year. They may have been longer-term employees that have resigned. So I was also asked to share a little bit just about the time commitment. And of course, you know that we have to post the positions for a minimum of 1 week when we're filling them. But also just the manpower. I was asked about that, just kind of an estimate of what it takes as far as how many hours it might take to fill a position. So by the time you screen your pool of applicants and then someone schedules the interviews and then we go through the interview process and then we go through checking references and then we go through, you know, personnel does what they need to do and then the training that is provided. So I would estimate anywhere from 8 to 10 hours probably is spent in filling one of these positions. So I don't think it would be a stretch to say, you know, you can kind of look at maybe around 40 days in the course of the school year that was spent filling these positions. So that's just a little brief synopsis of just last school year. Do you have any questions?
What does the training consist of?
He took my question.
We've done it different ways. We have in the past done large trainings at the beginning of the school year where we'll train all of our aides. However, our aides only come in one day before the school year starts, and that this year was Institute Day. So what we have gone to this past school year, and with this turnover, you can imagine it's impossible really to continue to provide these trainings with this kind of turnover. So our resource specialists oftentimes go into the schools and train the aides and train with the teachers on what is needed in that particular position.
So, when they get the training, how long, is it a day's worth of training? Is it 3 hours worth of training? Is it 2 days worth of training? How long is the training?
Typically, it's a few hours, and really it kind of depends on the position that is being trained for. And that's another reason why it has, you know, we have kind of gone to a more small scale training because you can be a little bit more, hit the things that aide might need.
And that meets a state requirement or the state standard?
There's really not a state standard for training them. It's really what we have come up with, and we cover the same things with them that we do with all our faculty members as far as confidentiality of information, seclusion and restraint, the kinds of things that we have to provide for our teachers as well. And then also things on managing behavior. We train on, we have our physical therapists often train with them as far as making safe transfers with students that have to be lifted or repositioned. So those are the kinds of things that we train on.
Do you know if any training options exist as a package as far as an organization or some type of web-based solution that provides that ongoing training so it's not maybe just one day, it's a continual process?
There are some things that we have looked at. There are a couple of packages that we've looked at as far as possibly going in that direction. The thing that we found so far is that most of the modules that I have looked at have been many, many hours of training. And within those many, many hours, for example, one module might contain some things that would be very pertinent, but other things that we might not feel are as pertinent as far as the history of special education. A lot of the modules contain things like that might not be quite as relevant to the everyday operations that one of our aides is going to be involved with.
I guess when I look at this, like, okay, you had 10 resign during the year and 15 after, so that's 25 people, but we're talking about 15 different schools.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at it on a per school basis, I mean, we have turnover in every area, CNP, teachers, everything. So I guess I kind kind of don't see that this is an extraordinary situation, different than any other aspect of education.
Well, I don't have the numbers as far as how many, have our teacher turnover, for example, or CNP, but I think 43% of our aides being new last year is a significant number. And I dare say that, and like I say, I just did this past school year for you, but I dare say if I went back past 3 years, it would look very similar, just from my experience.
But I'm just trying to gain understanding of the sheet. So there's 39 different rows.
And you'll see that some of them have been filled multiple times.
Right, so 14 of those 39 are new. So I guess there's new students that demanded that the position be
Yes.
there. Okay, so that's like.
Oftentimes there are, yes.
So those aren't like problems, those are just like, that's
Well,
just
they're
running
not
the school
problems
system.
this year, yes.
You just have to hire those
Right.
because,
You're-
so that's
you're
not
correct.
like a turnover problem, that's just like a student.
You're
comes in.
correct.
Okay,
You're
so-
correct
Well,
about
and a
that.
lot of times we'll have, if we need one, we've had to transfer someone from a computer aide. Somebody has been a special education aide, the student leaves the school or graduates, then they convert to a computer aide, but when there's another special education aide need, we'll convert them back to a special education aide. Many times they don't want to do that. But, they're hired as, really there's no, in our salary schedule, there's not a special education aide salary schedule and computer aide salary schedule, they're all in the same band. So we hire them as an as an aide, and we use them in the ways that are needed. So sometimes we.
So that's not in this document?
We've done that before. I don't know if we did that this past year, but we haven't
Not that
had
I'm aware of
really
this
good
past
success
year.
with that, honestly. So tend to, we have many of our aides that we have now started as a special education aide, and they've transferred to either be a PE aide or a computer aide or a clerical aide.
And this is good or bad?
Well, it's good for the employee. But what happens is we don't have any of our internal employees that are computer aides or clerical aides applying for special education aide jobs.
Right, but it's, at the very least, special education is providing a pipeline for other needs. It's not like a bad thing, right?
Well, it is when you consider the highest need, but probably the toughest job is making sure those students have somebody with them every day that's trained. There's not really necessary to do a lot of upfront training and preparedness for our library aides when we used to have them, or computer aides or the other aide positions. I would say it's a much high-pressure job being a special education aide, and that is why, honestly, in 3 to 5 years, many of our very successful aides tend to look for other opportunities in our system. Some will be career special education aides, and they are angels from heaven. But we allow our people to apply for other jobs, even if it's a lateral position.
Well, I guess if you hire a different firm to do that, those people aren't just going to magically all be angels. You're going to have the same kind of turnover. So I don't see that we really gain anything.
Well, there isn't, Spurred, which is a contract we're considering, their turnover rate is much lower than ours, and there's a lot of reasons for that. The pay is higher, there's other opportunities in times where they can work other jobs when we're not in school. And so there's reasons that their turnover rate is lower, but it is.
When you say their turnover rate's lower, are you talking about their whole company turnover rate, or are you talking about special education?
So Mr. Clayton is here. Glenn Clayton's the CEO of Spur, and I invited him here if he was able to come, so I invited him in. I said we might call him. In the conversation we had, what was it? What would be your turnover rate with your special education aides?
So we are currently the largest employer of special ed aides in Alabama, about 1,300 special ed aides statewide. Last year we had just over a 10% turnover rate with that group specifically, just that position.
But let's say a person starts at one school and they don't work out there and they go to another school, is that turnover or is that not turnover?
Yeah, if they are employed in that same position category, with that same customer, the same school district, we do not count that as turnover.
So that doesn't really give us an accurate picture. What if they go to a different school system?
If, for that school system, we would count that as turnover. If they leave that customer account, but we don't really have a lot of transfer between the schools. And I think the reason for that, so if you look at, what are the primary drivers in the labor market right now? You get sub 4% unemployment. Madison County will probably be a little ahead of that because of our economy. And so it's a very, very competitive job market. And the primary motivator for most of your workforce, especially workforce that's looking for positions like this, is going to be more driven off wage, so hourly wage, than it is off of benefits. And that's, we see that across the board. And so what happens is, what we typically are called in to do is provide a district with more flexibility to offer a higher hourly pay rate to that employee to attract employees and retain them. And it ends up still being cost savings or cost neutral for the district because of the difference in your burden costs in terms of your benefits. So I think with like a entry level aide coming into the district, they have almost 100% burden cost on top of the wage. In most districts across Alabama, I think that would be roughly the same. Here, when you factor in your retirement, your PTO, all of that, you're paying just as much in benefits as you are to the employee. And so we provide a vehicle that you can increase that pay rate, which attracts more people to that position that are qualified to do it, and end up retaining them longer.
Mary, can you explain to me the one that began at one school and then transferred to another school within the first week? How does that work?
Which number?
What number are you looking at?
It would be number 38. They were hired for one school, then they transferred to another during the first week of school. What would?
That could possibly have been need-based in that we needed to transfer the person to another school.
One of the reasons that we've tried to do this different ways this past year, we've posted the position through their teacher resource center. Special education students will have transfers to other schools. You guys see that in the transfer offers. As they're transitioning from one school to the other, if they have an individual aide, they'll go with them. We may get Sparkman Middle last year had an influx of in their self-contained unit, almost doubled the number of students, not out of the feeder pattern, but honestly, people are moving to our district because our special education teachers are incredible, and we have a really good reputation of caring and taking care of those kids. Our high needs population is growing, and so a lot of times we have to, as the school year starts, the first week or two, Mary will come to me and Karen and go, all right, we've gotten an increase in this, we've got to have a new unit. And we may look, okay, who can we transfer into there, who has kind of a lower need than we expected, so we'll look at that. And if we can't transfer somebody, we may, add if we can afford it.
So it wasn't the fact that this person said, oh, no, I want to be at this school, I don't want to be at this school.
Not in this case, but there are some transfers on the sheet where they did want to transfer internally, and we did grant that. But I didn't count those in, like, they're not counted in our number of resignations or anything like that.
So last year you started like advertising for itinerant positions. You didn't really identify the school, and you've changed that now. Or is that true? You have changed it now?
Yes, we have. We have changed it where all our aides are still itinerant, but we have started posting them at the school where the position is
And
located.
when did you start doing that?
This summer.
Okay, and have you found that to be, make any difference?
As far as our applicant pool, the applicant pool is pretty good in the summer. We don't generally have that much trouble filling the positions in the summer. It's the ones during the school year when people are in place that your candidate pool tends to be smaller.
So you think?
So back to your question, did that make any difference? It's hard to say right now because it's summertime, so it would probably be a better candidate pool anyway. I guess, you know, as the year goes on, we'll be able to tell more whether that has helped.
So the summertime hiring is not an issue for you typically in the summer?
Not as much.
It's just an on-demand as needed throughout the school year?
Yes, I would say so.
So the problem we're trying to solve, tell me again what problem we're trying to solve.
Well, during the school year, this was such a, when especially education aide will leave a position, whether that's take another position internally or to go take a position outside the system. And again, that starting rate, step 0, is, I had that up here, $10 and, Mary, do you know this offhand?
It's a little over $10 an hour, and
A little
it's
over
somewhere
$10 an hour.
between 12 and 13,000 per year, I believe.
So generally, if somebody can find a higher paying job, they will do that or take another lateral job or higher paying job in the system. And what we tried to do to ease the burden on schools was to internalize that. I asked Mary's department to do that. It became such a turnover. Mary was constantly do that. Dr. Minsky actually pitched in, and so my director of special ed and chief of staff were working together to hire special education aides so her staff could go in there. So we're continually, we have a gap in service because someone leaves, 7 days posting, and then you interview, and they accept a job, and then they train them. You're looking at 8 to 10 school days where there's a need to serve a special needs student that we do not have somebody in place.
But there
So
would be a
it
gap
costs-
with them as
no,
well, right?
No, the next day, if one of them took again, there's less turnover with Spur, but if there was the turnover, if someone left to get another job, you guys provide someone the next day, correct? So that is a huge advantage because it immediately fills the need, it provides that need for that student, and it saves, if you think of 40 days of work where our folks, instead of doing their assigned job or interviewing, spending 8 to 10 hours per employee, that is what we're trying to do to fix. And that's why, honestly, I didn't want to bring this forward before the summer, because we can hire aides in the summer. What I would like to do next summer is now that we've kind of doing it internal didn't work. It didn't work very well. It didn't solve the problem. So we would repost them if the principal wants to hire from themselves. We would allow them to post those jobs in the summer, and they can conduct their own interviews, and our principals we'd be happy to do that. If, as these jobs open up during the school year, whether it's 20 to 30, or if it's 40 like last year, as the school year ends, if a principal is happy with the aide and they've got a good relationship with the students and the faculty, and the principal says, hey, this is a keeper, we want to just keep going with this contract here with the Spur employee, they'll do that. If the principal's like, hey, it was good, but I want to really go through the process and interview, we'll let them post the job and hire it. So that when we need Spur is after the school year starts. And so that is why the timing is now on it. We didn't want anyone to get confused that this is going to replace anybody's job right now, and it is not. This is going to be, if this is approved tonight, there will not be anyone hired from Spur tomorrow. It is going to be when these start to leave and we have a gap in service for our students, we can have them on ready to be able to fill those needs. This is going to be really good for our students, and that's why I'm bringing it to you.
The vacancies you see here now, we are going to fill.
So the training we provide to our special ed aides versus what Spur can provide. Can you kind of elaborate on the training you all provide to those aides?
Absolutely. So we're certified by Glenwood in managing crisis safely with restraint. It's a 2-day restraint course that we do get full-time trainers. So we have people that are doing training every single day all over the state of Alabama with special ed. And so that allows us to much more rapidly hold classes. Whenever we're hiring new people, it's a 2-day class they go through. We also provide an app for all our workers to manage their schedules and their bank account information, all that sort of stuff to get paid. That also allows us to customize qualification requirements based on district requirements, including training. So we have 50 different training modules. So when we partner with the district, we'll sit down with instructional leadership and pick out what are the types of trainings we want to have available. We'll do all the mandatory required trainings like Karen's Law, Jason Flat, all of those. We also have trainings in assistive technology, special education basics, what to expect if you're going into the classroom, all of those types of things, because this, I think, has been indicated, doing special ed aid is not like being any kind of aid. It's a very difficult job. It requires a lot of preparation beforehand. So we want to make that available. And to your point earlier, we also make that available on demand. So throughout the year, we don't have to wait to the beginning of the year to do that. We can prescribe that training to them, and their app pops up as something they need to complete within a set amount of time. So if we discover that, hey, we think this person needs to go back through a given module, we can reassign that to them and do it anytime.
The Managing Crisis Safely training is huge, because that's the system we use as well, Managing Crisis Safely. And as he said, it is a two-day, full-day training. So if we're training aides, we have to bring them out of the classroom for 2 days, provide subs. So that would be very valuable.
And some of this training for existing aides be provided from Spur as well, the ones that are Madison County employees, if we went with this contract?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
There's nothing in this contract that would be hiring them to provide that training to your employees.
Say that again?
There's nothing in this contract that would have their company providing training to your employees.
Okay.
Well,
Separate
kinda
of the Appleton employee that they would provide.
They
to us,
train
yeah.
their employees.
I go back to what you said. You said we're getting special ed kids because we have a good reputation, and the difference in us and everybody else is that we don't do this. And so I just can't see that this is the direction we need to go. And if we did want to do anything, I'd say try it. Try it at one school. Keep going like you're going right now, because I think what we're doing is the best thing. But if you want to try it, pick one school that's the most problematic and try it there.
The thing is, if you pick a school and you don't know where your turnover is going to happen at, and your turnovers are happening somewhere else, and we know that, and a kid's going to go 10 days without an aide, I mean, while we're posting this, and we're like, no, we could serve you now, but we're just going to hope that a sub shows up. If they don't, then we're going to just have to cover it internally. I just don't think that's what's best for our kids. We have this contract gives us full control over how many aides that we use. We can stop essentially any time. The one restriction we have is we can't go with another vendor for 90 days, but I mean, obviously we wouldn't do that. Honestly, Spur is confident enough that we're tied to have X number of aides for this long of time.
What if we just used them to get the sub in there, and then we went through our normal process?
Well, because subs, so how the contract works is you set the hourly rate and then you pay an upcharge. That really covers the cost of benefits. With subs, we don't pay. Our subs don't get benefits. And so if we used Spur for subs, we would be paying an upcharge that we don't even pay our own subs. So it would be revenue negative if we use them for substitutes, because you're paying the sub rate plus 25%. we don't need to do that.
A substitute's not trained either. I mean, just a substitute teacher, when we have a vacancy and a need to fill, and we throw a substitute teacher in the classroom.
One of theirs would be trained.
I'm not talking about theirs, I'm talking currently right now. If we have a vacancy and a need in a special ed class, and all of a sudden that person departs, and we have to have a body in that class, we call in a substitute teacher who may or may not be trained in any special ed type of activity.
Right, so you'd be paying upcharge, but you get a trained person, so you.
With Appleton, correct, but currently, we don't have that
Well,
flexibility.
I guess you justify your upcharge that way. That person's got training for the
Saying
10
just use them for subs.
Just for subs. I mean, if that's really the problem, I mean, that seems to be one of the problems.
The problem is not getting subs, the problem is having that
Quality.
constant
Quality.
person in there. that's
I mean,
gonna
from
allow-
my standpoint, I look at, quality over quantity. I want quality, well-trained individuals for our most vulnerable kids. And, if we can get a child access to a qualified person who's been trained quickly for that individual child, I think that's a good option for us. Versus putting a sub in there who has no training, and you have that gap of, 8 to 10 school days. My concern is what does that do as far as consistency as well with that child? At least the consistent part with someone else is you at least are consistently have a trained individual in that class versus subs who are untrained.
Well, I personally think that if we hire our own people that are vested in that school, and I think it'll be different this year because they'll know what school they're going to. Before it was itinerant, so it was like, it's confusing. Where am I going to work? And, am I going to be moved around? I think that discouraged people. So I think the best people, and you also have a whole bunch of people that are still here that are going to be negatively impacted by this. So you may lose some of your good people in this process too, that just can't handle Appleton or Spur or whatever. So I think you have a danger of losing a lot of your good base that you currently have. And,
why would you lose your good base? Help me understand that.
Well, because I've gotten many, many emails that say that the people that are closest to the situation in the classroom and the parents, they're not up for this. They want to be in control of the hiring, and they want the people to work for Madison County. And so are those people going to get so frustrated by this new process that you end up losing them? And so over time, you're completely Appleton or completely Spur or whatever it is.
But are those that are those parents, and I'm trying to be sensitive to their concerns, but is it better to not have somebody in the class than to have somebody in the classroom within a much more reasonable time than if we have to go out and do a search by using Appleton?
What I'm saying is maybe you could get that person the next day, get a sub via them, because apparently they can just put somebody in there. Let that person stay until we can go through our normal hiring process, so we don't lose the integrity of what we have right
But
now.
our
We can get
normal
our
hiring
own person
process-
in there.
Yeah, our normal hiring process is burdensome and is hard, and it is hard to get a good pool of applicants during the school year. During the summer, principals have time to do that. They can handle that, but during the school year, when we have another option where we can get quality people in there,
Well, I think
and
this
we're willing
year-
to get them in with subs, I mean, but why not, if they come in quality and they're trained, and again, if it's not good for us, or if it's in December, we'll stop. If all of these special education aides that are hired and none of them, there's zero attrition, we'll have zero Spur aides this year. So, I mean, those that, the thing of a morale issue, if everybody is there and again, everybody just stays in their position, we won't have it. So this is a tool that our special education department and we are asking you for, that
But I don't
systems
think the
all
peop-
across
I don't think
North
the people
Alabama
that
have.
are in the dirt, in the day-to-day duties, they're not wanting this. And so those are the people that I think we should be listening to.
Well, there's some aren't, but there's many that are too. And
I haven't heard from any of them.
I know,
And this is something I've heard about even before I came on the board. This is not something that people that work in special education with those children want. It's just not.
And in that summer, if that principal wants to hire, if they've lost 1 aide or 2 aides, and if they lost none, they don't have any special education aides. But if they've lost 1 or 2 or 3, and they want to repost those and hire from within, we're going to allow them to do that.
I mean, Nathan and I talked about that, and we talked with Matt about it. I mean, you know, if they bring in a spur employee, but at the end of the year, they want to repost that and hire from within and do that.
Well, I kind of worry about that too, because our principals are on 3-year contracts. So if central office wants them to do one thing, you know, you go along to get along, or however the saying goes. I mean, they're going to try and do what they have to do to keep their jobs. And so that's nice to say, but I'm not sure that's going to work out practically to do that. So I don't think this is a good idea. I can kind of see it for a substitute to get somebody in that classroom to help those kids, but until we can get somebody lined up permanently in our normal hiring process, but just to go off with this, I think we're going in the wrong direction. I think your statement, people are coming to our system because it's better, that speaks to our current process.
And the demand is increased, and we are not able to meet it.
So you're willing to sacrifice?
We're not sacrificing anything. This is
Well,
going
it
to
sounds like-
improve the service. This is going to improve what we can offer
Yeah, but we're already the
our special
best.
needs kids.
I would like to say one thing. And I've listened a lot to both sides, and I'm not saying I agree or disagree with many of the things, but I do think it is unfair to assume that an Appleton employee automatically will not be 100% in. I am a healthcare employee, and I went into healthcare to help patients. You drop me in the middle of a desert, a hospital, a clinic, I don't care. I am all in, and I'm going to help that patient. And I would bet that most special ed aides did not go into this for the money. They went in it because they love kids, and I would bet that whether it's Appleton or Spur or Madison County or Huntsville City, those employees deserve to have the benefit of the doubt that they will equally try their best to do a good job regardless of who their primary employer is. I think it is unfair to assume that a group of people are not all in just because they are not hired by Madison County.
Well, we lose control over who we hire. That's the
No, we
problem.
don't, because we can send them home. But
In one
I'm
year.
not talking about the whole thing. I'm just saying, in general, it hurts my feelings that we would sit here and assume that a group of people that have dedicated themselves to be a special ed aide can't possibly be as good as us. And I'm very proud to be part of Madison County, but I think it is very unfair to assume that a group of people who chose to work for them because perhaps they didn't get a job here can't possibly be as good. That's not fair.
Well, there's the other systems, there's people who have made comments and who have experienced this.
It
I mean,
is
it's not-
unfair to make a sweeping generalization that because they're not hired from us, they cannot be as good. It's not fair.
Matt, can we do a 1-year review of this if we decide to go this route?
Yeah.
Can we do a 1-year review to this, and can we send out or develop some sort of a assessment that we send out to those schools and those schools only that employ the Appleton Spur employee to get their feedback so that we can make an informed decision as to whether or not this is the right step for our system in the following year, and then we make that decision to either continue with the contract or we terminate based on the contract itself.
Absolutely. We can definitely.
Principals still have control, if I'm not
That is correct.
mistaken.
If
If
they're
they
gonna-
feel like someone is not a good fit, that was my understanding, that they can, 24 hours, you can have someone different. And that's certainly not true under
The current.
currently. These are very special children that our aides and our special education teachers work with. There is no doubt about that. But it is a scary situation to me to think that we go 10 days sometimes with just a sub in a room. I've been a sub, and I've subbed in a self-contained special ed room. I was a certified teacher before that. I was so inadequate to do that, you know?
That's what I'm saying. Why can't we use them to sub? I get that. But then not just drop our normal practice. I mean, we hire every other position, and yet for some reason we think that the special ed position is not worthy of our hiring. It just doesn't make sense to me. Use them for the subs.
I think, Sherry, it's because there can't be, with these children who need a one-on-one aid, there doesn't need to be a day that they don't have somebody trained with them.
I know, but if you use them to sub until we can go through our normal hiring process, then we've solved the sub problem because we don't have an untrained sub because they can provide that. But then we go ahead and we get the people in the community in here and we continue like we've always done and get that person that principal that has a vested interest in that school rather than somebody that may live across the town or they're just not involved in that school. So you've solved your sub problem, but you haven't given up hiring this position like you hire every other position. You hire the person you want and you interview them.
So, Sherry, you mentioned that we need to be listening. We have 4 people who requested to address the board. I think this would be a good time to take a pause and, if the board allows, to go a little bit out of order and allow those folks to address the
Can
board
we
at
have
this
a
time.
short break,
5
maybe?
minutes.
5.
And 5 minutes to use the restroom.
Yeah.
But I think, are y'all okay with letting the people who asked?
No problem.
I think this is a good time to
Because
allow
they
them to
probably
give
don't
their
want to stay.
input.
Another 3 hours.
Is everybody ready to get back in session? At this time, we'll have the folks that requested to address the board to come forward. As you guys probably know, I think most of you have been here before, all comments will be limited to 5 minutes so that everyone who wishes to address the board will be given an equal opportunity. In the event you wish to address the board on an issue involving the general reputation and character, physical condition, professional competence, mental health, or in some instances, job performance of an individual, the board will hear your comments in executive session. If you're unsure whether your comments should be made in executive session, please see the board attorney, Ms. Cynthia Thompson. It's my understanding that Ms. Chanda Hasselman will be first. Oh, Beverly came up in between and said these two. Yes, and I need time.
It's freezing in here. I think I gotta wear a long sleeve shirt.
Put these sleeves down, I guess.
Thank you. My name is Shanda Hasselman. I'm speaking as Madison County Education Association President, and I am also a self-contained education teacher in Madison County system. I'm currently at Sparkman High School before I was in the Madison County cluster. Everybody hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to address the proposed Appleton contract. I love my public schools, and I feel like our students will be best served using Madison County Schools employees when at all possible. I do have reservations about the use of contract employees, but feel I've been given the opportunity to express my concerns and trust that the school board understands these concerns and they will promote an atmosphere that encourages the recruitment and hiring of system employees when at all possible. I do understand that there's a great turnover rate in this difficult job, and it's not for everyone. I myself started as an aide for 4 years before I moved on to pursue my degree and become a teacher. When this is the correct job for an aide, they are invaluable. We have several aides who provided many good years of service to the system, staying in the system until they're vested and quite often until they retire. Currently, we have an atmosphere where support staff work in collaborative environment where both certified and non-certified staff work for a common goal for the betterment of our schools and our communities. It's not uncommon to see these aides on their own time, volunteering on the weekends at school functions, going to Miracle League games to support their students, volunteering to go to prom, to chaperone. I do understand that during the school year, when positions come open, it can be difficult to fill them in a timely manner. And I don't want to see our classrooms shorthanded. While most of our aides do work out their notice and only leave us without someone for a few days, most clusters have a small handful of substitutes that have been subbing for our kids since they were in elementary on up to high school. They sub throughout the clusters. They know our students. They've grown up with our students. And there's very little disruption when those aides are in our classroom. Both of my aides are out sick currently because they both had emergency surgery just before school started. I feel confident in knowing that both the long-term substitutes that are in my classroom will take good care of my students. They know and love them. They've been there before. So anyway, I do understand that there's times that this is an extra burden on our principals to have to hire during the school year. And I do see where sometimes we might have to rely on an outside contract employee, but this should be a temporary fix. There needs to be a pathway for us to flip that temporary contract back to where it can be a school employee where everyone can enjoy the benefits and the security that being a part of the Madison County Schools family provides. Over the past 2 days, our local association representatives have had conversations with Mr. Massey, Dr. Minsky, Mrs. Stump, and board members David Weiss and Nathan Curry. I feel that we have had productive conversations And I feel that we do have common goals and that they understand our concerns. I feel that hiring aides to finish out a school year would be a very good compromise. And I like being able to offer those Appleton aides that work out a path to become a part of our great family. I would really like to thank them for offering our times, letting us express our concerns, and discuss ways that our concerns can be addressed, and for their willingness to continue this dialogue in the future should the need arise. I would also like to thank my principal, Mr. Chris Shaw, who has stepped out because he has so graciously allowed me to cover my afternoon duties to be able to come and discuss my concerns with the board members. And I would also like to thank all of you board members because I know you've been flooded with emails and phone calls, and I've heard from people who've let me know that you took your time to get back with them. Thank you very much. It is appreciated.
Thank you. Mr. Bellis?
My name is Joe Bellis. I'm a 16-year veteran in special education, currently teaching at Madison County Elementary School. I've taught the last 11 years in a self-contained classroom setting, and I'm speaking to the matter of the contract with Spur, previously or more commonly known as Appleton. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess I could say, Ms. Stump, that my wife happens to be one of those 10 that resigned, and I wouldn't blame her for resigning because she's getting to spend time taking care of our son. And there's no way that we could afford for her to work and pay child care. I mean, that's kind of a toss-up. It's a hard job. I would beg the board at this time to postpone the vote on this matter until more communication can be made, Ms. Rucker, with the teachers and the parents of the communities that these children are in. I've met with Mr. Massey concerning this matter, and I understand his reasoning for wanting to acquire this group as a quote-unquote tool under our belt. However, I think that this now would cause undue stress on students, parents, and teachers. Our special education aides are one of the hardest working groups of people employed by Madison County Schools, and the least paid. They dedicate their time, their resources, and most importantly, their love to the most fragile and vulnerable students of Madison County. I understand that the hardship that is caused when an aide decides to retire, transfer, or resign for whatever reason. By participating in this process, we are relieving the responsibility of our principals with the task of interviewing and hiring people to fill these positions. Over the past few years, we at Madison County have had aides to leave for various reasons. Ms. Mason has done an incredible job in finding replacements to fill those jobs with highly qualified individuals that are very respected and very revered by the teachers and parents of our students. If the board decides to go down this path, the teachers and administration have no knowledge to that individual that will walk into the school and work with those students. Now, while we have the right to ask that that person be replaced by the company if he or she is not a good fit for our school, that person, whether good or bad, gets to interact with our children for a short period of time. The population of students is greatly affected by change, usually in a more negative way. I had asked Massey yesterday if the aides are as qualified through Spur as if they were hired for Title I schools in Madison County. Our aides are required to have degrees or to pass the work keys test in order to get a job. He was unaware of the answer, and I asked him for that answer, and he said he was going to get back with me on it, but yet I have not gotten a response.
Yes.
I think that it is critical that we take the time to interview and find the very best fit for our schools than to rush and put someone in there that we have no knowledge about. Also, do feel comfortable with people that are placed in the schools without running background checks and investigating the individual personally. Are you willing to trust what someone or some other company says? There are many different scenarios that could be brought up here in this setting. More time is certainly needed to investigate whether this is the best fit for Madison County. Please be reminded that we learn from our mistakes and the mistakes of others, and that this has failed in other neighboring districts. If the decision cannot be postponed, I do ask that you vote no regarding this matter for the sake of our students. And a side note to it, you mentioned subs. Very few people will sub for special education, but the subs that we do have are ones that we have used for a number of years, and we rely on them all the time, and they're dedicated, and they have probably as much training as any of our aides do in the classroom. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Solid? All right. Yes, sir. You want me to
Can
address a
we-
couple of these?
can you answer that question
Yeah,
about the background check?
Background
so-
checks and the degree and the other thing.
Yeah.
The background checks is similar, the exact same that ours go through. Is that correct, Glenn? Y'all use the same?
It's the same. So the background check is exactly the same, done through the State Department. It's not requirements statewide, so it doesn't matter if it's through us or through the same department. But also, highly qualified requirement is the same.
And I checked with Mary about in Title I, if you didn't know, if you're going to be in any kind of instructional aid in a Title I school, you've got to have an associate's degree or close to it in the work keys. So, so yes, they would have to meet that requirement. So you're right, Joe. I said I would get back with you. So there you go. Thank you. All right. Is there any other questions? All right.
All right, good news and bad news. All right, because of the lateness of the evening, the good news is the lateness of the evening, I cut my presentation in half. The bad news is it was originally scheduled for 90 minutes, so Gary did say he would punch me at 35 minutes to let me know, okay? I will try to be a little briefer than that, all right? When we were working on the agenda for the evening, Ms. Bates and Ms. Stowe had asked that we include kind of some data updates, some instructional updates as a part of this, and I love to talk about data, so this was I'm ready to talk about that anytime you want to listen to it. But I hope that as we share some of this information, it kind of gives you a flavor for what our students are doing in our district and kind of how we are performing. I wanted to start this off, and I won't go through at any of one time all of our data. I mean, it's kind of have to break it down piece by piece. But I did want to start with our college and career readiness information. I think this information probably captures the work that is done pre-K through 12 in our district, probably as well as any information that we have. So with that, just want to bring you back, kind of focus back on our mission for our district, and that last sentence there that, you know, the mission for Madison County Schools is to prepare graduates for success. So all about preparation to be college and career ready, and we'll look at some data here. This is a significant part of our strategic plan, 1.3. As you've seen in our strategic plan, for the next 5 years, we've broken down activities that we'll be focusing on to improve our college and career readiness. For the 18-19 school year, you'll see these are the action steps that we will be doing, looking into course offerings across our district to ensure equity, developing a plan to continue to increase our advanced placement offerings and dual enrollment, looking to work through our advisory programs at our middle and high schools to put greater focus on our career exploration and college preparation. And then a couple of programs that we're really excited about. And one, the simulated workplace for our transition service students that we're going to start at our Career Tech Center this year. We're really excited to get that up and running for our students. And then the JAG program, Jobs for Alabama Graduates, is a program that we're implementing in Madison County this year, and it will help it'll help in this vein as well. Does preparation really matter? The dollars say that it does, okay? And it's not, you've seen these charts before, and it obviously shows the level of educational attainment directly impacts in a positive way the salary of individuals. But, you know, that's not to minimize people. There are certainly people that don't have master's degree and professional degrees that make very, very good livings and stuff. But this is an average. So preparation and being prepared to go into college or go into the workforce, that is a significant part of our mission and what we want to do. Tonight, specifically, we want to talk about college and career readiness. There are 6 indicators that the state of Alabama has identified that lets us know when our kids graduate that they're ready, that we've done our job. The first of those is having a qualifying score on any 4 of the ACT subtest. The second one is having, for us, a qualifying score on an AP exam. We do have students that occasionally transfer in that have an IB exam qualifying score. Number 3, earning college credit while in high school. The 4th one, having a silver, gold, or platinum level on the work keys. The 5th one, having an industry credential. And the 6th one, joining the military. So if a student achieves any of those 6, they are identified as being college and career ready. Just a couple of quick graphs here to kind of illustrate where Madison County has been. This system has been in place over the last 3 years. So if you go back to the graduating class of 2015, you see 71% of those kids had one of those 6 indicators. Okay, our class of 17, 81% of our students had at least one of those indicators. So we've grown 10% over that 3-year period. You kind of see how that breaks out based on those 6 indicators: ACT, AP, work keys, college credit, credentials, and military. And you can see it's pretty, our ACT results, our AP, and our work keys. I feel like a lot of times, because those things happen when a kid's in high school, a lot of times we focus that the high school is the reason or not the reason why those scores are what they are. But I really feel like all of those assessments are indicative of what has happened with the child's educational career since they started, if they've spent all those years in Madison County. College credit and credentialing, we'll talk just a little bit about 18. Our 18 data is not certified, so I didn't include it in this. It will change some between now and when we report on it. But credentialing is an area that we are doing better. We're about 8% this past year, Matt. So that's been one of the 6 areas that we've grown a pretty good bit in. This is what our graduation rates, the green bar, versus the college and career ready rates, the blue bar. We want these bars to be the same height, okay? Any student that gets a diploma in Madison County schools, we want them to have a corresponding indicator of readiness, okay? So this is our challenge right now, and you can see over 3 years kind of where we started in 14, 15, the gap between those two, and where we were in the 16, 17 year. This next slide is really, you know, when we talk about all means all, this is a great example of why that is so important in the Madison County school system. So this is just the graduating class of 2017. This is our most recent certified data regarding graduation rate and college career readiness, okay? Again, if we look at our all student categories, we're graduating kids at a very high rate, 94%. 81% of those students have an indicator of readiness, okay? For our black students, 98% are graduating, 67% have an indicator of readiness, and our students in poverty, you can see 85 and 63. So closing those gaps is where our focus is right now, and it's why, you know, again, I think our focus with our professional learning communities is, you know, will help with this. Just very preliminarily, looking at our class of 18 data, there in the yellow, you can see that while our all student subgroup is a little below, we're at 77%. Our black subgroup, 70% having a readiness indicator, and 68% of our poverty kids. So we've made some improvements there. Those numbers should only go up between now and the next time, whenever they're certified. Okay, there will be some data that happened this spring that we will be able to share with the state that wasn't a part of this. This is the state of Alabama. They do have college and career readiness goals between now and the year 2030. You can kind of see for the 2017 year, the state goal was to be at 68%. We were at 81. 2018, the state goal was 70%, and we were at 77, and should be a little. And we, again, when that number is finalized, we should be a little bit higher. But ultimately, by the year 2030, we will we'll be working toward that goal of 94+% there. Another area quickly that we do look at to determine college and career readiness are our remediation rates. These are provided to us by the Alabama Commission on Higher Education. Those are not percentages, those are raw numbers, okay? So for the 2014, 15, and 16 years, those are raw numbers of kids that went to Alabama public colleges or universities or junior colleges. So like, for instance, for math, 51 students in the class of 2014 had to take a remedial math class, all right? And so on and so forth. You can see the bars here on the right here, I guess. That's the percentage of our students that attend public 4-year, 2-year colleges and universities in Alabama from the Madison County school system. So looking at those remediation rates, about 19% of the kids, of our students that go to our colleges and university, about 19% have to take some type of remedial course. That is, I think the state average was 25%, and that has dropped significantly over the years. I think 23 was the highest that we have been in Madison County, so we continue to get better there. Okay? Here, you didn't have to punch me.
Oh, are you done?
All right. College and career readiness. Questions about that?
So what is the benchmark in every section of the ACT is different, is that correct?
Correct. So for English, it's an 18.
Okay.
For math and reading, it's a 22, and science, a 23. So you have to meet one of those 4.
One of those, right.
And obviously, English being the lowest, it's the one most students, if that's their indicator. And we have a lot of students that have that achieve multiple indicators, not just one, but they have to have at least one to count as being college and career ready.
And every student takes the work keys.
Every student is offered the opportunity to take the work keys.
Oh, they don't have to take it?
Well, I guess they don't have to take any test.
Oh,
I mean,
excuse me,
if
okay.
they choose not to. But
They didn't have me for a mama.
we strongly encourage all of our students to take work keys, ACT, both, and it's free to all.
They have to opt out, right? They're not going to take it?
Or just not show up for it. Yeah.
Okay.
Which is the easiest of the two.
We worked on our participation in work keys. The ACT folks show up, they get that. They don't necessarily understand the work keys, but, obviously it's a lot
Well,
of the workforce.
if you
requirements.
remember, in looking at work keys, the first year we did it, only 45% of our students that met that bar, and now we're at 71%. And it was because we had such a large number. It was a new test. I don't know. It probably didn't do a good job of really making it relevant to our students, and so a lot of them didn't take it.
It was in the folder. Academic data update.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
That's in the,
I get at least as many questions as the graphs.
Oh.
It's not as, it's.
Are you warmer?
I don't want to say.
Your bottom of
What
your
about
feet to your
the heat?
knees?
Yeah, what about the drainage?
College and creativeness doesn't cause turf toe. It does.
I just got one quick
One
question.
question.
One quick question. Do you see the remediation on math continuing to increase, or do you see it?
You see the number of students needing remediation in math specifically going up.
Mhm.
Okay. Obviously, that's a trend we want to turn the other way. When we look at overall remediation rates, we're in a much better place right now than we were 4 years ago. Okay. But to say that there are some things that we can look at doing that we could eliminate that remediation in our high schools before a student has to go to college and pay for a course that they don't need.
And I'll chime in
those
there.
are things that we're certainly looking at for the future.
I mean, I talked to a graduate just a few weeks ago that's heading to Mississippi State, and he wants to go into accounting, and we talked a little bit about you, Ms. O'Bannon, and maybe CPA type of work, but he mentioned he was kind of worried about the calculus, the math requirement in there. I'm like, I'm sure you'll do fine. He had some AP credits and that kind of thing, but the highest math class he took was Algebra 2. And it was because he was kind of one of those, not great at math, let's kind of take the easiest path to graduation. We would really like to, and this is what part of the Institute, why do you push kids to take pre-calculus and calculus or AP statistics? And it is, so you don't have to take that remedial math. So sometimes kids, if they don't feel like math is, they're safe in that, they'll opt to a remedial class, and honestly, some universities try to feed them there as kind of a safety net. People don't place, very few folks, universities will place folks in a remedial English class. In fact, they'll give a pretty difficult placement test to kind of encourage that. So I think we can change that with a more rigorous, that higher expectation for all. Hey, if you're not great at math, well, you definitely need to take this more advanced class, because we can offer some interventions and safety nets to get you there, so when you do go to college, you'll be ready. So I think that is an area we do need to focus on. We can do that through advisement and through our approach, and I think this process will help us with that.
I know, just real quickly in closing, I know our state has taken some hits on their use of different tests and data and stuff. I think this is a philosophy that they've largely gotten right. I think there are some ways this could be tweaked and made better. And I say they've got it right because in our high schools, the mentality for years was just all about graduation. And that's important. I mean, getting that degree is important, but getting a degree that means something is really much more important. And I think these indicators are, if a student attains one of these things, it is a pretty strong indication that something good has happened in their educational career. They can't get one of these. They can't meet one of these indicators without something positive happening. So I think this is a good place to start their data conversation to kind of understand what that end product looks like for Madison County, and that we're looking to close that gap between the percentage of kids graduating and the percentage of kids that have an indicator of readiness. So, okay?
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
Can I start my timer?
Absolutely.
Take your time.
Student.
You did put like seconds on
This
me,
can
so.
be required.
No, I think this is the one I asked for, so I should.
Yes, it is.
Understand 6
Just an update on the Safe Schools contract that we have coming up. In your folder, you have a calendar, basically a schedule for when they're going to be arriving. They're going to be sending 2 employees to come. It's the CEO of the company, and he also brings another gentleman who's done this with him. So they'll actually have, so when you see group 1 and group 2, one person will be going to these 3 schools that day, the other person will be going to the other 3 schools. So they kind of split up to cover those. If that is something you want to walk along with, you are welcome to be at those schools on those days, and you're welcome to
kind of walk along and see what they're looking for and get some feedback from them as far as the safety contract. So basically they're coming in, they're doing a physical evaluation of our schools based on safety, looking at traffic flow, they're going to look at car riders, buses. They're already started the process. They have sent surveys to our principals, and principals are filling those out, getting those back. We're collecting those, and we'll be sending them off to the Safe Schools operations here in the next couple of days so they can kind of start the process. But they will be here beginning August 20th, and we'll be here that week evaluating schools. Shortly thereafter, they'll be providing us with an update and as far as their findings. I'm hoping to meet with them before they leave on that Friday, just kind of get a quick little overview, a little verbal update before they leave. In addition to the Safe Schools, a couple things we have going on. Kerry and his team have worked on kind of the safety, system-wide, some of the things that were coming up, or airlocks and point of entry. So there's some things we've made some changes to. A couple examples. Buckhorn has front and back security that's in place right now. Newmarket has a new airlock. Hazel Green have that in process right now. So we're working on getting those things done. Again, some things take time, and we may need some more money, and we'll be maybe coming back to talk to you a little bit about that. But those things are in process. The third thing that I want to share with you, the 3 Fridays in September, the last 3 Fridays in September, and the first Friday in October, we're teaming up with Calhoun Community College, and they're going to be providing a first responders advanced CPR and first aid, and we're going to do it as a PLU, which is a credit that our administrators can earn. So I'm going to be sending stuff out on Monday to our schools, principals, and kind of encourage them to send at least one administrator to this training, and basically the program kind of goes everywhere from this is how to assist with the emergency delivery of a child to broken bones, broken arms, and it's more advanced than just a typical first aid and CPR class. If you look at the research is going to show issues we have with deaths in schools, a lot of them are health related or accident related, not active shooter. So having people trained, additional people trained besides the school nurse, we feel is going to be something beneficial for our school. So that'll be coming up. You're welcome to stop by on those Fridays. We'll be doing those from 8 to 3, those 4 Fridays. You're welcome to stop by and check it out. Any questions?
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mr. Cubic, you ready to talk policy?
I will defer to Ms. Thompson, sir.
Thompson?
I've sent you a draft of the changes to the student sexual harassment policy that OCR has asked you to look at. They gave you, a list of things they wanted changed to the policy that you had passed in 2012 was their policy, but they want updates. And so we've taken the list they gave us and tried to merge it into your existing policy. I do have a call into the OCR rep to talk to her about a couple of things just to make sure we're right on the same page. But you have to put this in place by August 31st. So the superintendents will be recommending the approval of this policy revision at the next board meeting. So if you have any questions, you can let me know. And I will report back once I hear back from the questions I have for the OCR representative.
So this same language would be in every school district's policy?
Well, this language not verbatim, they didn't write the whole policy, they gave you the changes that the first time when we did it in 2012, they gave you a list, something like the list they gave you. I have to go back and look in that file. But they didn't actually write the policy verbatim. That may have come from AASB in 2011. I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and look. But I think that might be where the original came from. Then in 2012, they had OCR requested changes, and those were made in July of 2012, as your policy states. And so now they're requesting further changes.
Any questions? All right. We'll go to administrative items. Start with contracts for services. I recommend approval of contracts for services as attached.
Motion.
This is in your board folder under administrative items, and item A is the contracts.
Second. Have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or question regarding contracts for services? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. I recommend approval for the following personnel items and the addendum as submitted.
Motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or question regarding approval of personnel items? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 I recommend approval of the following supplemental contracts as submitted.
Motion?
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any discussion or question regarding the supplemental contracts? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 I recommend approval of the staffing professional services contract with Spur Incorporated as attached.
Motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any new discussion regarding Spur contract or any question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? I oppose it.
Aye.
So 2 opposed and 3 in favor?
No, I'm sorry. Aye. I vote for.
Your aye, not nay?
Yes.
So 4 positive and 1 against. Okay. Motion passes. Move
And-
on to other business.
We have a couple student unique situation transfers. Would you guys like to discuss those under executive session or?
Yes, we do routinely move to executive session in order to discuss student transfer because of the nature of it being about a student. We have a motion to move into executive session.
So move.
Got a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second.
Hang on a second. Mark, do we still have those student transfers there? we did have
One.
Okay.
I haven't seen but one.
Got you. Okay.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, when we return, we will vote on the special needs, the student transfer and conciliation agreement, and then, quite honestly, hopefully at that point we'll adjourn, but y'all are welcome to stay for the 2 votes that will be remaining post-executive session.
Is that it?
That's it for now.
No, the transfer.